everybody. Welcome back to Passions Podcast, the podcast where we talk about the soap opera Passions. I am your regular host, Latara, back today with our own legal eagle, Karen. Welcome back, Karen. How are
Thank you. I'm good. It's great to be here as always and talk about this interesting bunch of episodes where everyone is under the influence of magic.
Yeah, we're talking about episodes 816 through 820. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, it's an interesting week. I mean, we're in I think it was Hannah on the Discord who called it a mega night.
Yeah.
And that's so true. We're in like another one of these Passions mega nights where we've been talking about the same 30 minutes of this party for for 3 weeks, going on a fourth. So, it's interesting to see these. I am enjoying these like visions, to be honest. Especially this week. I really liked Eve's and Julian's.
Yeah, me too.
I really liked that. And so I am enjoying these visions and seeing like what the fallout's supposed to be and everything. But I do feel like ultimately it kind of leads to nothing. As I'm thinking about each person's vision, I'm like, yeah, we're going to do all of this for so long and then it really doesn't culminate in anything. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't remember if you mentioned it on the podcast last week or if this was something we were talking about off the podcast, but this is a lot like The Mist that came out 300 episodes ago or something. Maybe not that
something
far
like that.
away, but
that sounds about right.
Several episodes ago. And I guess the way I look at it is it just gives people a nudge in a different direction.
Yeah.
People are very set in the relationship they're in and what they've got going on in their lives. And then these visions come along and make you wonder, well, what would it have been like if I did something differently?
Yeah.
Would I be happier?
Yeah, it's weeks and weeks of fantasy of, what ifs is what they call them, obviously. So before we get into all of these what ifs, let's give a huge shout out to all the patrons over on Patreon. Thank you to Munashe, Lisa, Sid, Randall, Hannah, Camelia, Jeanette, Eric, Fantasia, Sean S, Larissa, Maria, Lisa, Jessica Jean, Laura, Karen, Uche, Justin, Paige, Casey, Garrinch, Tom Bergeron, Daisy, Shane, Kelly, Taylor Harris, Crane, DJ, and Kelly. Thank you all so much for continuing to be patrons over on the Patreon. We've been having a lot of fun I know I say this every week, but we've been having a lot of fun on the Discord. There's a lot of discussion going on. We have had a blast on the watch parties. The last watch party we did Passions March Madness, and that was fun. We put together brackets and
we cracked up.
Yeah, like
Antonio
the most iconic.
Most annoying character, naturally.
Of course, Antonio won most annoying character. And then we did like the most iconic storyline, which turned out to be Hell House.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and we only did up to basically where we are in the podcast, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. So if you're interested in joining our little community, go over to patreon.com/passionspodcast and sign up for whatever tier you find most agreeable. And with that, on with the show. So today we are going to start with magic. And truthfully, for the magic storyline this week, there's not a lot of like magic storyline specific elements. It's like everything is magic because everybody's having these visions and everybody's dealing with the fallout from these visions. So like every storyline we go into today is going to have like a through line of like the green smoke and the magic. Everybody's dealing with that right now. So honestly, the whole damn show's about magic. So strap in, everybody. I told Karen before we started recording, I feel like this should be a short episode. I say it every week. I don't say it every week. Some weeks I know it's going to be a long one, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, this shouldn't take too long. So we'll see. I don't know. I might eat those words again this week because I did that. I think it wasn't that last week that I was like, we're gonna get through this pretty fast, and it was like 3 hours later. And
yeah,
we were still on talking.
I had to run on about how I like the Ivy and Sam storyline, and we hated on Antonio, so it
Look,
took a
and
while.
that's what I was saying. I was like, I get to talking and I don't stop. And I can't stop, won't stop. But we're gonna this week, we're gonna get through it. All right. So magic. Truthfully, sorry, Eric. I have one note about Hecuba and Connie and Tabitha. Y'all, they didn't do anything. Like they've already, you know, dispersed the green smoke. So now all week, all they're doing is watching in like the pool of water and making witty commentary. And I'm
Mhm.
so sorry, y'all. I did not write down the quotes. The episodes are 8:16 to 8:20. Hecuba does say some funny things if you want to check it out. Um, and maybe as we talk about it, some will come to me. But yeah, they're looking at all of these different couples. So we'll talk about them throughout each storyline. But one of the things that is going on down here in this basement or in this layer is they're looking, they're watching. But at one point, there is talk about the babies again, like that these babies are
Mhm.
going to be coming. And Tabitha says, "Yeah, there were four babies. I couldn't figure out who the fourth baby was." And Hecuba makes all the babies reappear, and she's like, "Maybe now you can figure out who that fourth baby is." And Tabitha like chases the babies around, going, "Who's your mommy? Who's your mommy?" So I
Mhm.
mean, it was
That was
funny.
cute. Yeah.
It was funny, but mostly Tabitha has like sour grapes about the fact that Hecuba and Connie are basically wreaking havoc and doing this evil, and she is basically warning them. You don't know you're gonna be what if you're gonna be able to control this, and just kind of raining on their parade,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And I think you made the point, Karen, that she was like so negative, so negative
Yeah.
about all of what they were doing, and it honestly, this seems like the exact kind of shit that Tabitha would do.
Right. She's supposed to be an evil witch, so why are you getting mad at Connie and Hecuba for being evil and trying to put evil in people's lives? That's what her job is supposed to be. At least that's what I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, but at one point she does say, I'm just concerned you're not going to be able to control this. It's like, but we are
Mhm.
agents of chaos.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to be controlling anything, really.
That's what
Um,
she says over and over is she's afraid they're not going to be able to control it. And she also says one time that something along the lines of she thinks it's going to cause more harm than good. But
yeah.
that is your job.
Yeah.
You cause harm. You cause pain and suffering.
You
I
know
don't know.
what? The goodness, maybe this was them showing us that Tabitha is actually good, and
Yes.
she's
Yes.
struggling with doing bad things now. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know, because yeah, this is right up her alley. She
Yeah.
does give them props at one point. It's like, I have to admit, this is pretty evil, I guess, but yeah, not much going on with them. Let's talk about the children, John and Charity and Kay and Miguel. So John is at the hospital keeping Charity company, and they're reading like a book of poetry that he brought for her as a gift. And then he recites a poem, an original poem. I didn't write it down. I wish I had, but I didn't.
Yeah. It was
uh,
something called the 11th hour. I didn't write it down either.
it it was teenage poetry.
Mhm.
And Charity's like, "Oh my gosh, did you write that?" And he's like, "Yeah." Or no, she's like, "That's so beautiful. Where is that in this book or something like that?" He's like, "No, actually, that's one of my original poems." And then he like flips his hair.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird because I don't recall this going anywhere, like this Charity John flirtation type situation going anywhere, but they do seem to be kind of setting up a John and Charity kind of side quest situation.
Mhm.
Because Kay talks about last week, she talked about like trying to get them together, like that was part of her new plan, but it's a dumb plan. But the show seems to kind of be putting them together. I don't know, do you know anything about that?
I don't remember Charity and John being together either, but I barely remember John at all from when I watched Passions back as a teenager. I literally did not remember it until the stuff with David came in, and then Grace and Sam were still together. So, Ivy needs another plan. And I'm like, oh, yeah, they bring in a son too.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, I don't remember a lot about what goes on with them.
okay. I don't think I'm pretty sure they never get together, but
Yeah,
I
I don't
hope,
think
I
they do
don't know
either.
how much I don't remember them like really pushing this any further than where we are right now. But it
Hmm.
does seem like John has a little crush on Charity. I want to say
Yeah.
that. Like it seemed like he definitely was like cozying up to her.
Hmm.
So anyway, she then gets a premonition of evil. She gets so scared. She's like, "Oh my God, Miguel, Miguel! I've got to find
Evil,
Miguel. Yeah,
evil.
yeah, evil Miguel. I've got to find Miguel." Reminder: she literally just had open heart, like not open heart
Yeah.
surgery, but she literally just got a new heart,
Hmm.
right? So her chest was cracked and they put a whole new heart inside of her. There's no sign that this girl was cut open at all, by the way. No nothing on her chest. Um but she's like, "I've got to go to the party." And John's like, "No. You need to stay in the bed. You have to stay here at the hospital like you just had heart surgery." And she's like, "No, I have to warn Miguel, something evil, something bad's going to happen. I have to warn Miguel." And so John reluctantly takes her to the party. It's like, I don't know. If I was John, I would have been like, "Girl, lay your ass down."
Hmm.
Like, we're not
Yeah.
going anywhere. Because if
Yeah.
something happens to her, I mean, it's her fault. It's her fault for getting up out of the bed and leaving and being so insistent. But also, like, I would, if I'm supposed to be there keeping you company or what have you, I would feel guilty if anything happened to the person that I was, watching per se.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, if I were him, I wouldn't be letting her go anywhere because I would feel kind of responsible for her. And
Hmm.
she's in a really fragile state, obviously, mentally and physically. So, but they go to the party. I guess they go home because she puts on a gown, he puts on a tux, and then they go to the party.
Yeah, I was a little confused about that because I watched 816. This is the episode where this stuff is happening. I watched 816 once and didn't take great notes on it, so I watched it again. Besides, I like other stuff that's happening, and it we'll get to that.
Yeah.
I Yeah, because Charity said, or John says, I'll go outside, you can get in your clothes. So I wasn't clear, is she changing into street clothes, then they go home to get her dress? Or did she, for some strange reason, have party clothes with her at the hospital? You
Yeah.
never know with these people in Harmony.
It didn't make any sense. Like, you're so frantic to get to the party because there's simply no way she had a gown, like a ball gown
Why would you?
at the hospital, right? After
Yeah.
having a heart transplant surgery. So they had to have gone home. So
Mhm.
you were in such a frenzy and frantic to get to Miguel and say, that there's evil, but you took the time to go home and get all gussied up. You could
Right.
just gone to the mansion. Yeah.
I don't understand.
No, it was whatever. I'm as usual harping on shit that does not actually matter, but whatever. It was something I noticed.
Mhm.
Anyway, Kay at one point let slip to Simone. This is just my next note. I don't know how we got here. I don't know what's going on here. Okay. Let it slip to Simone that she's waiting for Ivy and David to wreck her parents' marriage.
Yeah.
I guess they're at the party by this point.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Charity and John aren't there, but Kay and Miguel and Simone are there.
That's it. Okay, so they're the party. I remember now. Kay's upset because Grace accused her of spiking Miguel's drink. And
Mhm.
that's when she let slip to Simone, "Oh, I can't wait for David and Ivy to wreck my parents' marriage. And that way, like, my mom will be too busy with her own mess to try to stop me from getting with Miguel."
Yeah.
And she also says that her mother needs to suffer the way that she's suffering. She's like, my mom needs to feel my suffering the way I suffer for Miguel. That's how she needs to feel when Ivy comes and takes my dad from her. It's like, oh, but you know what? It sound like teenager logic to compare those two things, to be like, yeah, she doesn't understand that, because in Kay's head, Miguel was hers first, right? Even if he wasn't. So to Kay, Miguel was hers first, and then Charity came in and stole Miguel from her, which is what Ivy is trying to do to Grace. So she wants her mom to basically feel her pain. The two situations are not comparable, but in Kay's mind, in Kay's twisted little mind, they are. And so that happens, and then the green smoke starts to appear around Kay because Miguel comes back, and so it starts to work on Kay and Miguel, and then they share a vision. I really enjoyed their vision too. They share a vision of the two of them basically in college. She's like doing her homework in her room, and then he shows up and he says, guess what, I just got a football scholarship, a full ride football scholarship, so I don't have to worry about school anymore. I guess basically paying for school anymore. And then he gets down on one knee and he proposes to her, and they get engaged and they kiss and they're happy. And then Charity walks in their vision and is like, hey, I'm Charity. I'm your cousin, your mom's long lost sister's daughter. That's me. It was so weird.
It was.
But I actually really liked the addition of Charity into this vision in this way, because it shows what Kay believes, which Kay has said before, that if Charity had come to town after she and Miguel had gotten together, like if Charity, the two of them probably would have been friends. Like she feels like she would have been friends with Charity if Charity hadn't come in and scooped up Miguel, right? So I kind of liked that Charity comes in and there's like, Kay welcomes her with open arms and is like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to meet you, and I'm so glad to have a new cousin. And I liked this vision. Miguel is like so happy with Kay. They're so in love. I felt like these two actors had better chemistry than Charity and Miguel do.
I agree.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching them together far more than I have ever enjoyed the two of Miguel and Charity together. Like they had more chemistry. There was a spark there. There was something more there. There was also something a little bit more sensual about their relationship in that vision versus Charity and Miguel's very like virginal, like I don't know, pure as the driven snow virginal version of relationship.
I liked that couple too. The vibe I got from it was like, okay, yeah, I can see these guys as actual high school sweethearts. They grew up together, played baseball, baseball together, you know, did video games, like hung out all the time, and then they fell in love in high school, and now they're about to get married. So yeah. I could see that.
It makes perfect sense. Except for the football scholarship. I've never heard any mention of Miguel playing football. I remember them playing baseball and softball. I remember them ice skating. I do not remember him ever mentioning. I remember him fishing. Remember when he used to work on a fishing boat? I've never heard any mention of him playing football. But you know what? I feel like that's also just like a little clue. I'm giving Passions too much credit. I was about to say there's like a little clue to us that these visions aren't real, that they're more manufactured by Hecuba than anything else. Because Hecuba doesn't know what sport Miguel plays. She just threw a sport in there, and so that causes it to be like just slightly off. And so you're like, there's something not quite right about this vision. And honestly, you can find little things like that I feel like in every single one of the visions, like we talked about with Sam and Ivy's vision last week, where Ivy's making tomato soup cakes. This doesn't make any sense. right?
Mhm.
Um, so, and I think in even Julian's, we'll talk about that one more. There's a couple of little moments in there that I was like, that doesn't, I feel like that doesn't really necessarily track for these characters. So,
Yeah.
anyway, let's move on. So,
Wait, can we talk about what happens when their vision ends, or did you want to
that's
talk
the
about
next,
that
yeah, that's
later?
the next portion. That's the next
Okay.
portion for sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The vision ends. The vision ends. And Miguel and Kay come out of it, and Kay's like, whoa. And Miguel's like, oh my God, that was like some kind of nightmare. Ah! He was like,
Kay.
yeah, poor
So
Kay.
bad for Kay.
Cause it was a dream to her, a dream come true to
Mhm.
her. And it was he calls it a nightmare. He's like, that was some kind of nightmare. But Kay tells him, you know, that vision was telling us what things would have been like if Charity hadn't shown up, right? Like you and I should be together. And
Mhm.
then he kind of starts to kind of melt into her, and they kiss. They start to kiss very passionately. But they definitely have like that green smoke around them. So that I think that's also an indication to us that they're under, especially Miguel, under the influence of evil.
Mhm.
Evil. Well, as
But
they're
I,
kiss oh go for it.
but again, like we were talking about at the very beginning of the show, if this green smoke is supposed to be like the mist that came around, Tabitha kept saying about the mist, is it the mist that's making these people do this, or is it just bringing out what they've wanted to do all along? Is it giving them that little extra push?
Yeah.
So I wonder if the smoke is the same way.
And I think we kind of talked about it last week because the show does not give us a clear definitive answer
Mhm.
about what it is. I think it's a mix of things, right? Like I think at a certain point it's like you're being influenced, but there's also a part of you that is willing to go with it, right? A part of you that says, "Well, that does kind of seem right." So, I think it's a mix. I think it's influencing them to do things that maybe they wouldn't necessarily have done and remove certain inhibitions,
Mhm.
possibly. I don't know. So, for sure. Oh my God, is absolutely removing their inhibitions. It's like, what's the green stuff? Absinthe. Have you ever had absinthe?
No.
Me either. I'm too scared to drink it, but I've heard that it can make you hallucinate and stuff. And there's a whole
Mm.
scene in Moulin Rouge, which I have to this day never seen that movie all the way through. I've only ever seen like bits and pieces of it, but I went to see the show on Broadway, which I fucking hated it. But there was a scene where they drink absinthe and then they all just start tripping balls. It was probably the best scene in the whole show, honestly.
Is
But
that where I forget all of the characters' names, but the poor guy who's in love with Satine, is it him and his buddies who do
yeah,
that? Okay, I
yes,
remember that. Yeah.
absolutely.
That's funny.
Yeah, and so this green smoke is kind of reminding me of that kind of uh they're getting high on this green shit and all having like these, their inhibitions being thrown to the wind, and they're having
Yeah.
like these what ifs, and yeah. So anyway, they're kissing. Charity and John walk in and see them immediately. And Charity, of course, immediately faints. Like,
Of course. Yeah, I wrote in my notes, as she does.
as she does. I mean, girl, she just had a heart transplant. Your little heart can't take. Timmy's little heart can't take it, girl.
Mhm. Yeah, guard Timmy's heart. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yes, you need to be taking better care of Timmy's heart. That's what I'm most upset about.
For real.
Um, yeah, she comes in, she sees them, and then like starts to walk away. Miguel sees her having seen them, and he starts chasing after her. And of course she faints. Kay is watching gleeful. She's like, that's right. You need to understand that Miguel is mine now. Girl,
Mhm.
delusional. You're delusional if you think Miguel is yours now. That's all that you think that's all it took. It's going to take a lot more than that. Girl, you have kissed Miguel. This is what, their fourth kiss?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, a kiss does not make him yours at all. And so Miguel chases her down, Charity down, and she faints. They kind of pull her to, and when she wakes up, he asks her what she's doing there. He looks at John like, "Why did you bring her here? You were supposed to be taking care of her." And John's like, "Well, she insisted." She insisted. It was like, "Well, you could have said no."
Hmm. All
Well,
they had to do was say, here's this book of poetry. I'm going to leave this with you to read. I'm out. Talk to the doctors if you want to go home.
yeah, like he drove them there. So
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but Miguel asks, like, what are you doing here? And she explains that she had a vision of evil. And Miguel says, oh my gosh, me and Kate had a vision too. And that's what made us kiss. We had this, he explains about the vision, and something came over them, and that's why they were kissing. And he says, it must have been some kind of evil force. That must have been the evil that you had a premonition about. John's like, really? He's not buying it at all. Mainly because
Yeah.
he has not been in this town long enough either.
Right. He's new, so he doesn't know what goes on.
He wasn't here for the unkindness of ravens and the murder of crows and the bleeding walls and the house being literally sucked to hell. He wasn't here for it. So when people say evil, he's just like, really? David has the exact same reaction later on.
Yeah.
So it was, I noted that because it was funny. I was like, like father, like son.
Yep.
But and also to John's credit, I was like, I would probably be having the same reactions, like, oh, it was the devil made you do it. Really? That's what it is. Oh, you cheating on your girlfriend means that it was the devil. It's evil. Yeah. Okay. Sure, buddy.
Yeah.
But Charity believes Miguel. She says that I believe you. It was evil. I could feel it. And then she notices the green smoke. She says, look, you see that green smoke? That's what's causing all of this evil. And honestly, I wonder how many times they said evil in these episodes. They said, one of these days, I'm not going to, but so don't get your hopes up. But it would be very cool if somebody were to do like an evil meter and just clock every single time, do a supercut of every time they say evil in like a week's worth of episodes, like when something like this is going on, because they said somebody said evil 6 times in every scene.
Yeah,
week.
it was ridiculous. If we did a drinking game with that, we'd have alcohol poisoning.
Ruined. Do you hear me? We would need Eve to come and to scoop us up and take us to the hospital.
She just give us a sedative.
Yeah, to drug us up.
You want a sedative or something to quiet your nerves?
No, Eve, I'm drunk. So, yeah. Oh my God, they say evil so many times in these episodes. So Charity says, "Yeah, I believe it. Look at the green smoke. That's what's causing all this evil." And Miguel and Kay and John all see the smoke, and they're like, Miguel says, "Oh, we didn't see that smoke here before." And Charity says, "Well, like most evil, Miguel, you can't see it unless you know it's there." Oh my God. And then
I hate her. She's so annoying.
I hate her so much. You can't see it unless you know it's there. And Miguel's like, Charity, I'm gonna take you outside to get some air. I'm gonna take Charity outside to get some air. Take her back to the hospital. What do you mean you're gonna take her outside to get some air? Take her to the hospital where she belongs. And actually, go find Dr. Russell and tell her, like, to make her go back to the hospital.
Put her in bed, make her rest.
Yeah. Find an adult here and tell them, hey, this girl needs to go back to the hospital. Somebody be her guardian, and like you're supposed to fucking do. Like, y'all are over here doing this shit at the Crane Mansion. Meanwhile, Charity's roaming Harmony with a brand new heart, right? With no supervision. No adult supervision. This girl needs to be guarded. I know she's 18, but y'all can't leave her unsupervised. I feel like we should have learned that by now. Anyway, yeah, they need to take her back to the hospital. They don't. What else is new in this show? So Kay's upset because Miguel is like doting on Charity again. Obviously, he's she's his priority, but Kay's upset about that. And she's contemplating another way to keep Miguel away from Charity. She's trying to figure it out. Meanwhile, Tabitha and Hecuba and Connie are watching what's going on with all of this. This is when Tabitha says she's worried that they won't be able to control all of this evil, and that's worrisome to her for some reason. And so they're watching as Miguel is comforting Charity, and they talk about the green smoke, and then Miguel says that he and Kay were both innocent victims of the smoke. He's like, yeah, we kissed, but it was the evil, and Kay and I are just innocent victims. Yeesh. I don't know.
Sure.
I know Kay doesn't like it when he calls himself a victim.
Yeah.
Though the first time she absolutely victimized him. This time it didn't have anything to do with Kay. So I can also get down with him saying like, yeah, we were victimized by the smoke, but I also can see why Kay would be kind of like hurt by that, right? Because he liked it. Please. You didn't tell me you didn't like it. He was so into it.
Mm-hmm. And he's all, keep in mind, Kay has had a pretty rough night. She's having this thing go on with Miguel where they have this lovely vision, but then he acts like it was awful. So she's sad about that. And before that, she had the fight with Grace, where Grace accused her of spiking Miguel's drink.
Yeah.
So she's not having a very good night.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because Miguel does say it was some kind of nightmare at first, but then he very quickly kind of softens towards Kay, gets like goo eyes. He makes the move on her. Let's be clear. He kisses her, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So yeah, part of me is like, are you trying to convince yourself that it was horrible, right? By saying it was a nightmare, you know? So, but yeah, he's saying, you know, we were just both victims, Kay. I don't blame you, Kay. And then Charity says, you know, if we don't want evil to take hold of us, we have to be completely honest so that evil can never get a good foothold on us. And then Hecuba zaps Kay from like, why does Hecuba have so much power? This is like a hologram of Hecuba. The real Hecuba is inside of a bottle somewhere. I think at Tabitha's house. So it's weird to me that this like random hologram of her is one, even here, and two, that she has so much power and can do anything, right? You're just a hologram, but whatever. If Eric was here, he would explain it for me.
Yeah, I was going to say we need Eric back to give us the scoop on Hecuba.
He would have a very good like explanation, or at least his own understanding that would make me go, okay, all right, I buy it. I'll buy that. I'll take it. But Eric's not here, so I'm not buying it. I'm not taking it. We're not gonna take it. I'm not gonna take it. Why does she have any power whatsoever? Whatever. So she does anyway, y'all. She zaps Kay and gives Kay this idea. Once Charity says, yes, we need to all be honest with each other so evil can't get a foothold, Hecuba zaps Kay so that Kay gets the idea to say, you know what, we do need to be honest about everything. And you know what, Charity, as your cousin, I feel like I need to be particularly honest with you. And I got to tell you something, and it's about Miguel and making love. Why would you say it like that? It's about Miguel and making love. And then some bullshit happens with Simone, so she doesn't get a chance to say anything. And we're going to talk more about what happens with Simone. But later on, this comes back around. Charity says to Kay, hey, before all that dumb shit happened with Simone, you were going to tell me something about Miguel and making love. What was that? And then Kay doesn't tell her, because Kay was going to tell her, like, me and Miguel had sex, right? Or made love. But she doesn't tell her. She's like, I just want you to know that the church looks down upon premarital sex. So the two of you shouldn't be making love before you get married. And like, that's it. I was hoping that she would actually say it. I knew she wouldn't because it's too soon, but I was hoping that she would.
I
You know,
was too.
you know, the pacing in Passions is so incredibly slow, and most soap operas are the same. Now, here I'm gonna make a shameless plug for Beyond the Gates. Y'all should be watching that if you're not watching it. If you like soap operas, it's very good. And I will say the pacing is good in that show. Like we're not getting huge reveals, but we're getting some good reveals, some good steady streams of like this person does this and then this person finds out that they did it. You know, and I like that, and it's starting to spoil me in watching with watching Passions, like watching them at the same time, watching Beyond the Gates and then going back to Passions and going from that kind of pacing in a soap opera to this kind of pacing, because I know this is going to take forever.
Hmm.
I
I
know
haven't watched Beyond the Gates. I need to check it out, but I watched Days, and even the pacing of Days is better than Passions.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the writing on Days, even though it has its issues, it's not, I feel like it's better than Passions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The writing on Days is better than Passions. Especially in my opinion, especially like if you hold up 2003, 2004, 2005 Passions to like 2003, 2004, 2005's Days. Yeah, the writing is better. Passions is more exciting, right? Like there's
Mhm.
more interesting things going on. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, the writing, it's so clunky on this show on Passions. It's
Hmm.
so whatever. There's some things that we're gonna talk about in the Julian and Eve stuff that the where the writing, I was like, is this a rewrite? Did they reimagine this, or am I misremembering? So we're actually gonna move on. You have anything to add for Magic before we go on to Troubled Marriages?
Nope, I think I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. We covered that. We made
Mhm.
pretty good time on that. All right, going on to these troubled marriages. Where are they in my notes? Here they are. Yeah. We're gonna start with the Sam and Ivy stuff. So I'm gonna let you take it away.
Thank you. So we left off last week or last group of episodes with Sam and Ivy. Um, Ivy says she really loved Sam, and he admits, I loved you too. They kiss. It starts off as a tender kiss, and then they start making out. He is all over her.
He like gets in the wheelchair with her.
Yeah, he's like kneeling down on the floor by her wheelchair and leaning in to kiss her, but then he is leaning so far in that yeah, his upper torso is in the wheelchair too.
He's like in her lap. I love
Yeah.
it.
And they're enjoying that. And then fucking Phyllis walks in on them and interrupts them. And she says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know anyone was in here." And Ivy says, have you ever heard of knocking?" Because Ivy is definitely pissed off that Phyllis interrupted her time with Sam.
Yeah.
So Sam is all over himself, like I don't, he's pacing the room and putting his hand on his head. He said, "This isn't what it looks like." And Ivy says, "It's okay, Sam. She's not going to tell anyone, right?" And Phyllis says she won't. They get her to leave the room. I wrote down Ivy has her Miranda Priestley moment. If anyone is familiar with The Devil Wears Prada, I love that book and movie. Um, and Ivy looks at Phyllis very coldly and says, "Now go."
Yeah.
And that reminded me of Miranda.
That's all.
Yeah, that's all. Um, Sam, after Phyllis leaves, he's still talking about the kiss. He can't believe he did it. He's saying that never should have happened, and I don't know where it came from. He's standing near a table with his back to Ivy when he says this, and she rolls her wheelchair over to him and puts her hand on his arm, and she says, "I know how it happened. I know why you did it. It's the same thing came over me, and I felt all of the love and the needing and the wanting, all these emotions that we've kept pent up over the years, they're coming out, and these emotions aren't going to go away until they're satisfied. Sam doesn't believe it. He says, we've been over this. We don't belong together. He's still not really looking at her when he's saying all this. I just wanted to note that. But he doesn't seem to believe the vision meant anything. Ivy does, and she thinks it means they belong together. Sam brings back the same train of thought he had last week when they were talking. He says, I don't think you would have been able to live a regular middle class life. Ivy says, I would have loved it. All I wanted to be was your wife and the mother of your children. I wouldn't have cared if we lived in a shack. Maybe going a little too far on that one, Ivy, but
100%.
Okay. I'll let her have it. Sam still doesn't believe what she's saying. This goes back to what we were talking about last week. Why does she have to bend completely to his lifestyle? Why can't they have some kind of compromise? That's my thing.
This show, if I've learned one thing I've noticed about this show is it leans very heavily on like traditional gender roles, and so if you get married to a man, even though this doesn't track for Eve and TC's marriage, but basically if you get married to a man, then you have to live the man's lifestyle. He's the breadwinner. He has to, you have to defer to him, and he's the one that we decides where we live, how we live, and how we spend our money, and makes all the money. So yeah, that's just kind of like their weird passions rule. But I agree with you. It doesn't make sense that Ivy wouldn't. She has an education. Like, and look, what's her name? Grace. It's like, what's that lady's name? Grace works, right? She's a business owner. So why wouldn't Ivy also work? Why would they have to live in a shack if he's a police officer and she also has a job? In 2002, y'all would have so much money and live a nice middle class, comfortable lifestyle. She probably, I don't know what kind of degree Ivy got, but I'm sure she could make a decent living with her whatever education she got. Yeah. So I agree with you. It was like, why is that even part of the conversation? It's like, I would have lived in a shack. Girl, y'all, there is no scenario where y'all would have been living in a shack.
They might not have had luxury, but they would have been okay.
They would live the way that they might even be living better than Sam and Grace live now. And Sam and Grace are not destitute. They live a nice middle-class life. So, yeah.
So Ivy and Sam go back and forth. Ivy says, you say you want the security of a happy marriage with Grace, but what we just experienced, that passion, believe me, I know Grace was the farthest thing from your mind. I liked that line. Sam insists that's not true, but Ivy just goes in on it more. She's not giving up. She says, you can't deny it and you can't forget it. You still love me. You still want me. And they do this thing where they are facing each other now. And she takes his hand and she says, you want to make love to me right here, right now. She touches his face and he's holding one of her hands in his against his chest. It's like they're holding each other's hands as they're talking. I think that's cute. Ivy takes Sam's hand in hers and kisses his palm, and she tries to get him to make love to her. She touches his face, and Sam, she's saying all this stuff like, make love to me right here, right now, all night long, like we used to. He's not really saying anything. She touches his face and brings his face in and kind of holds it against her neck and shoulder, and he starts... I couldn't exactly tell, but it seemed like he was kissing her neck.
He was like nuzzling her neck. Now, all of this happened before Phyllis came in, right? Because once Phyllis comes in...
No, this was after
They went
Phyllis.
back to... Oh!
Yes! And I want to note that the green smoke went away when Phyllis came in, or right before she came in. So that is gone. He can't blame what's going on right now on the green smoke.
Well, it might still be there. We just can't see it.
Sure. But this just goes back to the.
I'm sorry, I interrupted
I'll
you.
say that.
But he was nuzzling her neck. He was like ready to, he was like giving her a hickey. It was sensual. It was gorgeous. I loved it. Honestly, the physicality between the two of them was very sexy. It was very hot. I was all about it. Let me see if I got my sexy music. It was very that. It was hot. It really was. And they're such good looking people. Like watching two good looking people, like, you know, get into the heavy petting and the heavy breathing. Oh, I was into it for sure.
Yeah.
So what makes them stop?
I think finally he pulls away and he's like, no, I love Grace. And Ivy's insisting, but you still love me. And she says, no, Sam, she can't satisfy you like I can. But he's like, I need to. She says, I know you still love me. I know because I felt it. I felt that passion. He slowly sort of pulls away from her, seems to get his head back, and he says that things were over between them when Ivy married Julian, and he's meant to be with Grace. They have a beautiful life together. And once she gets an annulment, he'll marry Grace. I think his tone sounds weak to me during a lot of that. Like he doesn't sound like he believes what he's saying through a lot of this, in my opinion.
To me, it sounds like he knew he slipped up, and he didn't feel good about what had happened between him and Ivy. I think he also was considering, God, how am I gonna deal with this? The truth and the reality of what just happened here once I go back and talk to Grace. And so I think he probably had a lot going through his mind at the time. But as I've said a bunch of times about Sam has made a firm decision in Sam's mind, he has chosen his wife, and he's not going to go back on that because he's so noble. And so yes, he's wavering, but I think his conscience, his firm conscience is like, Grace is my wife. Grace is the woman I love. I'm going to go be with Grace. You've made this choice. You made this bed. You have to lie in it. It's that kind of, he's that kind of person, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it's obvious that he loves Ivy. It's obvious that he still loves Ivy. And again, I've said this a bunch of times. He loves both of these women. Yeah. He really does love both of these women. He has chosen Grace, and he's made a firm choice in Grace, and he wants to go and follow that. It's hard for him, though, because he does love Ivy.
But this goes back also to something you've said, and something, I know it was definitely something that Ivy talked about a while back when they had the whole situation with the mist, when he kissed her before. And I think you brought this up too, Latar, but it's the difference between words and actions. He's saying he loves Grace. He's saying he wants to marry Grace after she gets the annulment from David. Why do you keep kissing Ivy? Why will you not leave her alone? When you first walked in that library, she was like, don't worry about me. I'm fine. Like, go do your thing.
Like father, like son, right?
Yeah.
Because you are right. I have said that about him, and I've said that about Ethan a lot, where it's like, you say one thing, but you do another. And you are absolutely right. When he sees Ivy, he could turn around every single time. He doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't. He goes and engages with her. If you really want to make the firm choice and say, like, I love my wife, I'm not fucking, because it's not like you and Ivy don't really have anything to talk about. I know people might say, well, they have a son together. He's a grown ass man. I could see if they had a small child together. They don't. They don't have a 10-year-old. They have a 25-year-old who's off doing his own shit. So the two of these people do not actually have any reason to ever be in the same room together having conversation with one another, right? If Sam truly didn't want to. So I do agree. his actions, his words say one thing, but his actions say another. So yeah. But so he leaves, right? He goes looking for Grace.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah,
But yeah,
after they go back and forth.
I just want to say again that you said maybe the smoke was still there, but we couldn't see it. That doesn't seem to be what's happening with the other people, though. It's like it
Well,
comes, they have their vision, and then it disappears.
They said that the smoke, I think, here's what I think could possibly be going on. I don't know, because Passions doesn't give us any real answers.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what I think could possibly be going on. They show us the green smoke to let us know that these people are being affected by the smoke. But then it disappears because they can't see the smoke. Because they can't see it unless, like Charity said, unless they're hip to the evil, right? So then we don't see the smoke anymore because they can't see the smoke. That's what I was thinking.
But with the Sam and Ivy thing, right before Phyllis came in, the camera specifically pans down to the ground and it shows the smoke receding. Like it knew she was coming and it had to get out of there. But then Sam is nuzzling Ivy's neck and letting her hold him after it is left. He could have pulled away from her. She's in a wheelchair. She can't be that strong where she could like hold on to this strong policeman. She's not holding him against his will.
It's a viable theory that he's no longer under the smoke spell or whatever it is. I don't know if I 100% agree. I think he might still be under the influence. I think there's lingering effects once they have, because actually Tabitha and Hecuba and Connie talk about that at one point. See if I had taken better notes. If only I had taken better notes. They talk about it at one point about how the damage is done and they're going to be continued lingering effects of them having these visions. So I know that it's there, but they're also being manipulated in a sense too. Like, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So what happens with when he finally leaves? He goes to find Grace. We have to talk about what's going on with Grace and David. Oh my God, these two idiots. So Grace and David also have a vision together. And but before they have that vision, David tells Grace that they've hit a snag with this annulment. And the snag is that there's a question that he had to answer, and he had to answer it truthfully. And it was about his feelings for his spouse, and he had to confess that he still was in love with Grace. And so that's gonna cause problems for the annulment, because they'll only grant an annulment if neither party has any feelings for the other. That's not true. I looked it up. I Googled it myself because that didn't sound right to me at all. It doesn't, both parties don't have to agree and say like, yeah, I'm not in love. You can still say like, they could both still be in love and still get an annulment, because it's not about whether you love each other or not. It's about whether you should be married or not, right? If this should be a legal marriage. So anyway, he's hit a snag with this annulment that he never fucking filed. Let's be clear. He's not done any work on that. And Grace doesn't know that he hasn't done any work on it, because she herself doesn't give a shit about the annulment either. Like, yeah. Obviously she doesn't care about the annulment, because if she did, she would have gone with him to like file it. And there was all kinds of paperwork. Surely she has to sign some shit, right?
Yeah.
Surely there's something. You're the lawyer. Surely she has to sign something.
I'm sure she has to sign something.
But she doesn't know what the process is, or where they're at in the process. And now he's talking about he had to answer this question. It's like, why were you the only one who had to answer questions? Did she not have to answer the questions?
Yeah.
So he's like, so the annulment has hit a snag, and he confesses that he still loves Grace, and Grace is like, well, I'm with Sam, and he's my husband, I love him. And then this is when the green smoke comes in and affects both of them, and they get this vision, and they see themselves together at Sam's house, I might add.
Yeah.
The set is Sam's house. I want to say that pissed me off so bad. I said I cannot believe because. And honestly, at first I was like, well, maybe Passions just didn't have the money. But even Julian get a whole new set for their vision. So why couldn't Grace and David get a whole different? Why are they in Sam's motherfucking house? That pissed me off so bad.
Why couldn't they at least decorate it differently to make it look like it was a new house?
It is exactly Sam's home, down to like cookie tin fell. It's empty, of course, but oopsie, saving it. Saving that. It's a nice container. Anyway, sorry, I'm off. Okay, down to the American flag. That's like, I think it was like his dad's flag or whatever. It's like folded up. I was like, they didn't even redecorate this place. It's Sam's home. I'm surprised I don't see pictures of Jessica and Kay and Noah on the mantle. So anyway, they are in Sam's home having sex. That's really all you need to know. Grace, they give Grace Ivy's personality.
Right, like they gave Ivy Grace's personality last week.
Exactly. They gave Grace Ivy's like sultry personality. Like she had on a fur coat and she was naked underneath and she like took it off and revealed her naked body. She looks good too. I want to say like I could see her legs. Like obviously we didn't see her full nudity. But like her legs, her body, body was tea. She looked really good. And then they like laid down in front of the fireplace and made love. And I'm pretty sure we saw this almost exact scene with her and Sam many, many, many episodes ago. And I can't remember if it was when they went to that lodge or if they did it at the house. But I remember them on like a fur rug in front of a fireplace making love. I remember that. And now they've recreated that scene with her and David.
Maybe it did happen at their house. But speaking of stuff that's the same, I swear Grace in that vision is wearing the same shoes that Ivy wore when she went to the police station and tried to seduce Sam. They look the same to me. I need to go back and look at those episodes and compare it.
Yeah, I've seen Ivy in that coat. I think those were Ivy's costumes. I think that was Ivy's costume.
Just gave her Ivy's costume. What the hell? That's so gross.
Yeah. I've seen Ivy in that coat. So I mean, they said we got this fur coat. Somebody's got to wear it. I'm gonna put this in as many scenes as possible. Yeah, I didn't care for it the same way I didn't care for the way they made Grace in Sam's vision. I didn't care for these visions. I didn't care for the David and Grace vision. I didn't really care for the Sam and Ivy vision that much. I didn't like what they did to Ivy. And truthfully, I did like what they did to Grace, but I just don't like seeing Grace and David together in Sam's house. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
But they get this vision together and then they come out of it, because I was trying to remember if John was in the vision. John's not even in the vision. They never see John. Because remember, in Ivy and Sam's, like Ethan shows up dressed as a cop and, you know.
Because John isn't her son.
John isn't her son. But she don't know that. She thinks he is.
Yeah. And if it's her vision too, then yeah, he should have been there.
Yeah. So.
Come on, Passions.
They come out of their vision. They both realize that they both had the exact same vision. And he tells Grace that she needs to let her feelings for him out. This is just a manifestation of what your feelings really truly are. You still love me. That's how you don't remember it, but that vision is exactly what our marriage used to be like. No, it is not, because Grace doesn't act like that.
Grace, yeah, she gets really upset by the vision. I wrote, why does she always look like she's about to cry or pass out? Does she get it from Charity? It must run in the family, because Charity is the same way, and that's why. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I can't stand either one of those characters.
Yeah, so yes, Grace is always either about to cry or pass out. Like,
Yeah, she whines at one point, I want the annulment.
yeah, well,
Lady, come on.
and the you know what? This annulment bullshit. You're never gonna get the annulment, girl. Get a
Yeah.
clue. Buy a vow. Buy a
David
vow.
makes a good point. He says if you loved Sam so much, you wouldn't let a piece of paper come between you.
Yes, he makes an excellent point there. So how does she respond to that? Because I didn't write it down.
She winds up um like Miguel softened to Kay, she winds up softening to him, and David tells her to give in, not to fight her feelings for him, and they kiss.
Yep, and they kiss, and very passionately. And this is when Sam and Ivy kind of come, because Sam's looking for Grace, and Ivy's following Sam, obviously. And walk in and see them kissing.
Yeah.
And
Ivy
Sam,
does the thing where Sam walks past the room Grace and David are in. Ivy sees Grace and David, and she's like, "Oh, Sam, don't look." So of course he does.
yeah, that did happen. And so Sam comes back into the room, sees David kissing his wife, attacks him immediately, tells him, "Get your damn hands off my wife."
Flies off the handle.
Yeah, he flies off the handle. You know, reasonable. He hates this man. We all do. Everybody but Grace hates him. And so he's like attacking him. Grace grabs Sam, pulls him away, tells him to stop. And Sam says, I'll kill you. He says that to David, you know, if you come near my wife, I'll kill you. Grace pulls him away, says, it's not what you think. It's like, what could it possibly fucking be? Wait, what do you mean? I think the two of you were kissing. Am I wrong about that in thinking that the two of you were kissing? Because that's what I think. I hate when they do that. It's not what you think. Do you even know what I think? You haven't even let me say anything yet.
Yeah. And once Grace gets Sam to calm down a little bit and stop beating up David, she turns to David right away and is like, "Oh, are you okay?"
Yes. Yeah, she's like, "Are you okay, David?" I mean, I guess, but she likes that man. She likes him. So she pulls Sam away, tells him it's not what you think, explains that they got this vision, explains what the vision was, and she says that that's what made us kiss. And they go back and forth for a while. Sam, did you write any of this down? Because I did not.
Okay, here's what happens. Ivy and Sam look at each other, and Grace says, "I can explain." Ivy and Sam share a look, and Ivy's like, "That's odd. That's exactly what Sam said when Phyllis caught us together." Sam says, "Does this vision mean you want to stay married to David?"
There it is. Yeah.
Grace does not say yes or no. She just says it's hard to explain.
That's what I was looking for. Because I remember Grace said some bullshit.
Yeah, as she does.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. Is it hard to explain? Is it hard to explain, or is it just hard for you to say it? I think the explanation is easy. I think the saying it out loud part, not so easy, right?
Right.
Because she definitely has feelings for David. And you know what? I'm actually going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here for Grace. Grace has never been with anybody to her recollection but Sam, right? Getting to that age, she's getting older. It's like you've been with one man your whole life, and then you learn, actually, technically I've been with two, but I don't remember the first one. I think I should get to try it out. You know, it's only fair that I will then remember it. And then it's like, yeah, now I really did in my body. I feel like I actually have had two men. Nothing wrong with sleeping with one person for your whole life. Obviously, nothing wrong with that. But you know, there's something to be said about doing a little sampler here and there from sampling the delicacies, as Julian might say.
Yeah.
So Grace, in a way, I kind of do understand Grace. I don't agree, but in a way, I do kind of understand Grace being torn here.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's never had anybody. She's never been in this like situation where it's like someone else other than Sam loves her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's never had she never had the choice, and she thinks she missed out on making that choice. I think.
Yeah.
She didn't, obviously. David is lying to her,
Mm-hmm.
but she believes she's missed out on this grand love that David's telling her about.
Mm-hmm.
And she's falling in love with him.
Yeah. And Grace even tells Sam that after having that vision, it really made her feel like she and David shared a life together. It gave her the idea of what that was like.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, that's where Ivy and Sam share a glance. And I was wondering, does that mean they felt the same about their vision? Did it actually give them physical feelings like, okay, this is the way I would have felt if we had a life together?
I think so. I think you can say that for everybody's visions in these weeks, that they have that feeling of this is exactly how it would have. They really have been manipulated into believing and feeling like this is exactly what it would have been like for us.
Yep.
And these are the feelings that we will have. So then y'all, Phyllis walks in. I love Phyllis. I really love Phyllis.
Yeah, she was on my shit list before. Now I'm enjoying her.
I love Phyllis. This is my girl. Phyllis walks in, blabs immediately about walking in on Sam and Ivy. She's like, and Chief Bennett, I'm so sorry about walking in on you and Ivy earlier. I believe you when you say that you were kissing it was a mistake that you were kissing. And she just like says the whole thing. And then she leaves. Like Sam's like, okay, Phyllis, please, it's fine, whatever.
He tries for a minute to get her out. He's like, it's okay, really, get out of her.
Yeah, he didn't want her to say anything. No. He was acting actually extremely guilty, right? Yeah. Like if it really didn't mean anything and it was really just a big misunderstanding, why can't your wife know?
Right. Good point. Mm-hmm.
So, because the terror that was struck in him, the terror you could see in his eyes, the minute Phyllis walked in the room, right? He sees her and he makes a beeline to her to try to keep her from talking.
Yeah.
And she's just so apologetic and genuinely so, but also I'm like, girl, Phyllis, are you just being messy? Because you see who's in this room.
She's trying to start something.
I loved it.
She's got a boring life. She's got a boring job at the Crane Mansion, so she needs some drama.
I loved it. And Ivy says, did you write down what Ivy said? Because it cracked me up. Ivy said
about
something like, I didn't really like Phyllis before, but now she's my favorite maid.
Yes.
I thought about making that the episode title, but I still might. But that made me laugh because I love Phyllis. Yeah. I love Phyllis.
Grace after this, oh my God, she is pissed.
Grace gets mad. She gets pissed. She gets spicy, and I loved it. I was like, yes, girl. Yes. She's basically calling Sam a hypocrite, saying like you were in there kissing Ivy and you came in here so ready to kill David for kissing me. And she talks about like, oh, is it okay for you to have something on the side but not the wife to have something on the side? Mm-hmm. She says, why is it okay for you to kiss Ivy but not for me to kiss David? Yeah. I mean, she made some very good points because he came in very hot, trying to kill David, trying to beat David up after he had just been really getting to second base with Ivy, right? They were doing more than just kissing. Yeah. So he was feeling her up. So at this point I was with Grace 100%. I was
Essentially, Grace is like, so Sam, what's good for the goose isn't good for the gander.
Mm-hmm. I loved it, especially when she was like, "So a husband can have his piece on the side, but a wife can't." Oh,
Right.
you ate with that one, babe. Good job.
That's what she wants. That's what she wants. She won't admit it to herself, but
I agree. You know what? I think you're right. I think that was one of Grace's most honest moments. I feel like Grace often isn't being 100% honest. And is always like kind of putting out this projection of like this perfectly good and noble and pious woman. But everybody gets upset, everybody gets angry, everybody has feelings and emotions and wants and needs that aren't necessarily aligned with like the right thing, the good thing, always at all times, right? So I loved that. I love that. I wish we could get more of that from Grace. We won't, but I wish we could. But yeah, so she says all of that, and then Sam tells her it's not what you think. Ivy and I also had a vision, and Ivy chimes in, right? And she's like, "Yes, Grace, we did have a vision. It was a life of happiness with me and Sam and Ethan too. He was dressed as a cop because he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps." Grace is like, "Ethan was in your vision too?" And it's like, yeah. Ivy says, "Yes, he is our son." Oh.
maybe when Grace said that, she was wondering, like, hey, why wasn't John in
Why
my
wasn't
vision?
John? Yeah. I mean, I'm wondering the same thing. Although they were having a sex vision. Like she was having a sex vision. So
you don't want your son to walk in on that.
yeah, let's leave John out of it.
Right.
For his own mental health. But yeah, Sam tells her about the vision. Ivy chimes in saying that it was all, they were so happy in their vision, thinking that this is gonna like push Grace further away from Sam. But at this point I have to bring in Hecuba and Tabitha and Connie, because what happens here is that because Ivy said that to Grace starts to realize, okay, y'all had a vision, I had a vision. The visions are clearly basically trying to break me and Sam up, but that's not what Sam and I have said we want. And so she gets a clue. She buys a vowel, and she realizes I feel something. She gets like a, premonition or feeling of evil. Of course, evil. And so, I don't know why I said and. So she starts to realize about the evil, and because what Charity said, once you realize the evil is there, you can see it. They see the green smoke, right? Because she's now clocked it. And Tabitha mentioned to Hecuba and Connie that they were creating so much chaos that it was going to be obvious that evil was at work. And so she was like, this is why I don't work like this, because it does not work. Eventually it implodes, right? Because once the subjects know that they're being manipulated, you can't undo that, right? Like once they can see the evil, you can't have them unsee the evil. And so Tabitha did warn Connie and Hecuba about that. Of course, they're like, whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's go. We've sown so many seeds of chaos. We'll go on and look at another one, right? But Sam and Grace basically get back together. Like, they reconcile right here in this moment, where they kind of apologize. Sam actually apologized. I said they apologize. Grace does not apologize at all. Sam apologizes. Sam apologizes.
She makes him apologize to David.
Yeah, she makes him apologize to David, and he does it.
Yeah.
And he does it. This man is whipped. Okay? He does it. He apologizes to David because she says to him, she's like, you need to apologize to David for thinking that he's trying to steal me away, because he's not. He literally just told you 3 minutes ago that he can't go through with the annulment, basically, because he still has feelings for you and is in love with you. What do you mean he's not trying to steal you away? He obviously is. It's obvious. It's blatant.
And Grace explains the annulment situation to Sam. And Sam doesn't seem that happy about that. He's like, well, why why can't you guys just lie on the paper, essentially?
Yeah, he accuses Grace of not wanting the annulment.
Hmm.
He says, "Wait a minute," because Grace explains, "Yeah, he is in love with me, and so it's going to be harder for us to get an annulment." Yada yada. He says, "Why can't he just lie?" I would lie.
I would lie to get you back. And that's why that's goes to my argument that he is a better match for Ivy. He's a good guy. He he's a responsible guy, but he's got an edge and he belongs with someone like Ivy who's not perfect, who's not always a goody goody.
Yeah. Well, Grace says Sam accuses her of not wanting the annulment, and Grace somehow manages to drag Kay into it, which really annoyed me. She was like, "We're trying to set a good example for our daughter, for Kay. How do we expect Kay to, no," she says something to the effect of like, "Kay's been acting out and she's been so horrible. And it's because you and I are living in sin, and I believe in the church, and how can we expect Kay to do better if we're talking about lying on church paperwork?"
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
She goes into this like this morally, superior rant about how they have to abide by the laws of the church and blah 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 blah. Um, Eventually they talk about the evil. They say like, this is all evil. It's just evil. We're all being influenced by evil, and that's kind of that for a minute, right? Like they're like, oh, it was just the evil, and then um Sam and Grace basically make up. And but later Ivy has a conversation with David, because David has fallen in love with Grace, and up until this point he was still saying like, "Ivy, you're terrible. I'm not gonna help you break them up." And then he would continue trying to break them up, right? And he was just talking shit about Ivy and saying like how he, Sam and Grace are meant to be together, yada yada yada, and that he can't break them up. But after that kiss with Grace this time, and after that vision with Grace this time, now he has been influenced to really start working with Ivy without having to be really pushed by Ivy. He says, "I'll do whatever it takes to get Grace away from Sam." And Ivy's like, "Great, excellent. I'm glad you're finally on the winning team."
Yeah. Glad to have you fully on board after we've been doing this for a year or however long they've been working together.
Right. Do you have anything more to add to the Sam and Ivy stuff? Because I'm going into TC and Eve and Julian next. Those are my next notes.
There was a funny line from David when Grace was talking about evil, and David, I couldn't hear what he said completely, but I think it was something like, "Yeah, evil is blonde and parked in a wheelchair."
Oh yeah. Yeah, because when they start talking about evil, he like rolls his eyes. Like he's like, whatever. I don't think he even sees the green smoke. Like he doesn't believe at all.
Oh, one thing I wanted to say is Ivy, this is a similarity with Ivy and Kay. When the kids saw the smoke, I don't know if Kay actually saw it and lied about it. I don't know if Ivy actually saw it and lied about it, but they both said, "I don't see it."
Yeah, they did. I agree. I don't know if she saw it and just I felt like Kay was lying, but with Ivy, I'm not sure. Yeah, because I mean, Kay knows that Kay knows more about evil in this town.
That's true.
Besides Tabitha, she's the person in town who knows the most about the evil, right?
Yeah.
Besides Tabitha and like Father Lonigan. So I think Kay definitely saw the green smoke. I think she absolutely saw it. Okay. So now we're going to talk about what's going on with Eve and TC and Julian and all of these people. So TC's walking around this mansion with Eve following behind him, all angry because he found Eve and Julian in the same room together. He's just like, I can't believe that man had the nerve to be in the same room as you. And it's like, oh my God, divorce this fucking asshole. Divorce him already, Eve. Look, everybody knows I'm not the biggest fan of Eve, especially as a doctor. I don't hate Eve. I just find her annoying sometimes. But she deserves better than TC. She deserves better. She's too good for him. So yeah, he's talking about how horrible Julian is, and then he's like, I wish he had died, but then actually maybe being alive the way he lives might be a better punishment than having to be dead. Is a worse fate than death. His life is a worse fate than death, basically. And then he's like, everyone hates him, including his wives. Like, Theresa can't stand him. Ivy never loved him. Rebecca is just here to get what she can get from him. And his own father wouldn't even help him when he was on the run. And so Eve listens to that and she's like, listen to you say it like that. I almost feel sorry for him. And TC's like, sorry for him? Why should you feel sorry for him? You know what, honey? You've got too good a heart. You've got such a good heart. And I know that, but Julian doesn't deserve it. Blah, blah, blah. Rebecca enters.
This was so good.
Rebecca enters with her donkey, and it's like jingling because it's like a collar made of bells.
Yeah.
And she's in, I do not know what you call these dresses, but I think they're kind of like it's like flowy, I guess, like a Mexican type dress. I don't know. I don't know what you call this dress. It was a pretty dress. I actually really liked it. It was blue. It had like flowers on it. And it was like off the shoulder, had the ruffles. So it was a really pretty dress, but she's like walking around with this donkey to use in
Is this
sex
the first
play.
time she's had a donkey on the show?
This is the first time.
Nice.
This is our first donkey appearance. Eric will be happy to hear about it, I'm sure.
And she's talking in Spanish. She's like, Buenos noches, amigos.
Yeah.
And looking for Julian Crane.
Yeah, she's looking for Julian. And they tell her like, I think he's in the library, right? So she's like, goes off to find him. Meanwhile, Julian is in his library, and remember, he and Eve had like a small conversation before last week when TC walked in on them. But Julian is like listening to one of Eve's tapes, that song that she sings. You know what? I'm gonna get a clip of that song so I can play it from time to time, because I feel like this is gonna start coming up again a lot. So he's listening to Eve singing, and he's reminiscing about the good old days between him and Eve. And Rebecca comes in with her donkey, ready to do some sex play with him and the donkey. I honestly don't even want to think about what the point of the donkey is. I don't want to know what they're doing with the donkey. But Julian's like, I'm not in the mood. He's a little down. And she's like, well, maybe it's this song. You're always listening to this song, and it's so sad. You know what? I'll change the tape for you, Pookie. And he tells her, no, don't do that. And tells her, I'm not in the mood. You need to go find something else to do, because it's not going to be me. And so she leaves. After, she's just like, okay. And she leaves. Then Eve comes back because she's looking she had lost a charm off her charm bracelet. So she's like looking around the mansion for it, but she also hears her own voice coming from the library. So she like rushes through frantically. It's like, what are you doing listening to this? She closes the door behind her. What are you doing listening to this? If TC's heard this song on this tape so many times at this point, if he hears it one more time, he might figure out that it's me. It's like, again, divorce this man if he cannot recognize your voice. Divorce him after multiple times of listening to it. Divorce him. Divorce. Yes, people singing voices sound different than their speaking voices to an extent. But if you've heard it multiple times, and the first time you heard it, you're like, that lady sounds so familiar. Who is that? She sounds so familiar. It's like, okay, so you notice that it does sound like a voice that you know. So after,
And she apparently used to sing around the house.
yeah. So he should have figured it out by now, but whatever. So she says to Julian, like, how many copies of this tape do you have? Because she had destroyed one already. And so she takes out the tape and she destroys it. And he's like, I have many. I have plenty. There's plenty more where that one came from. Then these two get into a very real and like honest conversation that I loved. Julian's so horrible. I have to remember like how horrible Julian is because I'm not ready to forgive him yet. But Ben Masters plays Julian so well, and he becomes such a sympathetic character in these moments, like, and that I have to remind myself Julian is fucking slime, and I had to do that. Eve had to do it too. Eve had to remind herself too, because he started to kind of she started to soften towards him. So let's talk about it. They just rehash the past all over again. The same old, we were together, but you abandoned me, and this and that. Then they get their green smoke vision. I loved this vision. Their vision was my favorite vision of all the visions, I think. So they come into their fabulous apartment or home or whatever it is. And we find out that Eve and Julian have been together for 25 years and that Eve is a big, huge superstar, music star. She also acts like she's just like a Beyonce type, Whitney Houston type. I think that's what they were going for, actually, was going for Whitney Houston, which makes sense because Whitney. Oh, I also had this realization, which honestly, we've been doing this podcast for so fucking long that I probably have said this before. But today it occurred to me that they named their kids Whitney and Simone after like two really prolific singers. They named their daughters after two singers, two really, really famous singers. At least that's the way I'm seeing it now. Whitney Houston and Nina Simone. I think I thought about it because in this vision, Eve is very obviously supposed to be kind of a Whitney Houston type of character. And it was great. I loved it. She's got all these awards and she's on the cover of Rolling Stone for like the 10th time. She's winning all of these I think they called them whammies instead of Grammys.
I thought that was cute. But then they used the real names for other awards like Oscars and Emmys and Tonys and stuff.
Yeah, but
Were you gonna change the name for Grammy?
Yeah, for the one music award is weird.
Yeah.
And so we find out that they've been together for 25 years, but Julian was disinherited by his father. But he, not Whitney, Eve credits Julian with a lot of her success, right? Of managing her and helping her build her career. So they've just been working together for 25 years to keep her on top. And it's a gorgeous life. They have a beautiful life together. And then we cut away from their vision because I feel like their vision was a little longer than everybody else's. We go in and out of their vision a few times and they talk to each other and then they go back into the vision. They talk to each other, they go back into the vision. So they cut out of the vision and Julian says, oh, my dreams are coming true right before my eyes. And then he looks at Eve and says, I love you, Eve, with all my heart. That vision is what I've always wanted. Oh, I know. And Julian's so horrible. I have to remind myself that he tried to kill Sheridan.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat as you. I really like Julian as a character. Ben Masters is fantastic. I don't know. I have a hard time getting over all of the horrible stuff he's done, but I keep reminding myself, like you guys have talked about on the podcast before, look at all of the stuff he's gone through. Look at this shit Alistair's done with him and is going to continue to do. Yeah. You can see why he is the way he is.
Exactly. Like you said, I've said it before. I will say it again. Yes, Julian is a villain. Yes, Julian has been slime and a bad guy. But he also clearly was an abused child. And adult. He's been abused by his father his entire life. And even if it wasn't necessarily physical, he has been we know that Alistair is a master of psychological torture, and he hates his kids. So we don't even know the extent of what Julian has probably done to I'm sorry, what Alistair has probably done to Julian in his life, in the ways that it affected him. It's not an excuse, but it is an explanation, because because Julian is a bad guy. So I have to remind myself, like, Julian did this, he did that. He got Theresa drunk, took advantage of Theresa. He tried to kill Sheridan, did all that shit with the imposter. He's done a lot of really bad shit. But he's so sincere in these scenes, and that's something we never see with Julian unless he's talking to Eve. We never see sincerity from Julian. He's such this is such a dynamic character, in my opinion. Yeah. He's such an interesting character, and Ben Masters, what a pro, because I don't know if any actor would be able to take this material and basically be a villain, and we, even when Julian is being like a villain, we still kind of like him, right? Like you laugh. He's such a nincompoop, in Ivy's words, right? And I just want to, big up to you, big guy. Big up to you, Ben Masters, because thank you. Because I should not have felt the way I felt when he said, "I love you, Eve. I love you with all my heart. This vision is what I've always wanted." I shouldn't want him to get what he wants. And I do. I want Julian to get what Julian wants. I think part of that too is that I also want Eve to divorce TC. I don't want her with him. I don't want her with him at all.
She brings out the best in him.
Yeah. I want them to, as much as I hate to say it, I want them together. I want them together. So this week really made me go, oh yeah, I really want these two to get together. Like, and I remember watching this back in the day and really rooting for them as a couple and being like, yes, I'm loving this. So then, they talk about, we see more of this vision. TC enters. TC's in their vision. He
goes, Julian!
Yeah. And you're like, what's going on with TC? But he comes in, and he comes in kind of hot, but then he like hugs Julian. He's like, thank you for the stock tips, man. You've made me a fortune. And we find out that TC is a successful tennis star. He's won Wimbledon. He's about to win the US Open. And then Rebecca comes down the stairs, and Rebecca turns out to be Eve's new publicist. And so she's there to orchestrate a photo shoot for Eve. And then TC sees her from across the room and is struck. Like, these two see each other, and it's love at first sight, right? And TC flirts with her, and I mean, I really enjoyed this, although that was a portion of it. The way I talked about, whatever I talked about, listen, I can't remember anything. Whatever I talked about that bothered me in the vision, where I was like, I feel like that doesn't really fit. This, I also felt like that didn't really fit. TC and Rebecca together does not actually make sense to me.
Yeah.
They just threw it in there I guess to give TC and Rebecca something in this I don't know. To me, it's almost like Hecuba manipulating it so that Eve and Julian both think like, all of our lives would have been happier if we had gone down this road, right? But it doesn't, to me, it doesn't fit TC and Rebecca. Do you think?
It doesn't fit for me either, but I am remembering that scene a while back where Rebecca was trying to put something in TC's head. Was it
about
Theresa?
Ivy. It was about Ivy.
That Ivy was behind David coming to Harmony.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. When she was cozying up to him on the couch, it did make me think about that a little. But yeah, I don't see them together. They're not a natural fit for me.
No, I'm not seeing it. But they do it in the vision. That's what it is. And then Julian and Eve's son shows up in their vision, and they go to look at him. They're like, "Oh, son, you're here," and it's obviously Chad. It was obviously Chad, but he has like no face.
That was creepy to me.
It was very creepy. You can't see his face, and so that was like the one portion of the vision that they both found very unsettling. Right? They were like, "Oh my god, that I didn't like that part." They're talking about it, and then Eve starts talking about their son and what possibly could have happened to him. Like maybe this vision is telling us that he is alive, but because it made me feel so unsettled, that maybe the vision is telling me that I shouldn't be trying to find him, and that finding him will destroy my family. And Julian is like, well, isn't he your family too? And then Eve's like, you don't get to question my love for my son when you abandoned us. And Julian says, I didn't know you were pregnant. Is that the story? I didn't realize that was the story. There was no point when he realized that she was pregnant.
I don't remember how it went for them in Hidden Passions, and I don't remember what they've said on the show about it, but I was always on that train of thought where he didn't know she was pregnant before
I guess
they broke
because
up.
she's always said that he abandoned her when he found out she was pregnant. I thought that's what they, you know what I mean? So that's been her version of the story, but maybe now we're learning that he had no clue. But Eve doesn't seem to be surprised that he's saying that he didn't know that she was pregnant either. So I'm very confused. Hannah, Passion Scholar, if you can please write in and let us know what you remember about this. And I feel like Garage also typically remembers some of the older stuff too. So if y'all can write into the Discord if this is a rewrite or if this has always been the case. Because to me, that was news to me that he didn't know she was pregnant, and he didn't find out until much later that they had a son. And maybe I just forgot because it's been so fucking long since we even talked about any of this. You know? But I was a little bit like, wait a minute, Julian didn't know she was pregnant? So that's where we're at now. That's the story they're telling now. Okay. So that's where we're going forward. That's the story we're going with going forward. So anyway, he asks her, you know, don't you remember how we were in the beginning, how in love we were and how we didn't care? We didn't have a care in the world. And she said she is starting to kind of fall into that, like, yes, the good old days, and fall into his little honey trap. But she remembers, she says, no, yes, it was nice, but you ruined it all with sex and drugs and alcohol. I was so innocent when I met you, and all I wanted to do was sing, and you even took that away from me, introducing me to your disgusting and vile lifestyle. And he says, you could have said no. And then she says, I didn't want to say no. Oh my God, Eve, girl, pick a lane.
Wow.
She says, I didn't want to say no. I loved that crane lifestyle. I loved that you loved me, and and she stops short. And Julian says, y'all, oh my God. This is the kind of shit I absolutely love. In Passions, in any kind of show where there's like a love story, romance. He looked at her and he says, finish the sentence, Eve. Oh, baby, I don't want to say too much, but I was a little turned on by that. I was like, ooh, tell me what to do. I loved that. Finish the sentence, Eve. You loved me. Admit it. Admit that you loved me as much as I loved you. And she was gonna do it. She almost did it. But then she said, you're a disgusting pig, Julian. When she's not wrong about that. She's not wrong. Because I think in Eve's mind too, that I think she just does not trust Julian at all. And so even though she likes what she's hearing from him, I think in her mind, she is trying to keep her guard up because she feels and believes that Julian is trying to prey on her and he's just trying to like ruin her life, have sex with her, leave her to fend for herself and deal with the fallout, and abandon her again. And I cannot fault her for feeling that way at all. And yeah, make Julian work for it. That's how I feel. You gotta put in some work, buddy. Whistle while you work. You gotta do some work.
I think to some extent that's what's going on with Sam and Ivy too. Sam did admit he loved Ivy as in past tense in the past. He's admitting that much. Eve won't even admit that much. But in both of those cases, I think Sam's issue is he is not sure he can trust Ivy anymore because she's lied to him. She broke his heart. So he's not sure he can trust her. And Eve knows Julian is a despicable pig. So she's like, maybe I cared about you back then, but I can't care about someone who has your personality right now.
Yeah. And I agree that there's like a I agree with that parallel that you drew there because, especially with the, like, I think Eve's like, he's going to have to work for it. And Julian is going to have to work for it. The same way Ivy's going to have to work for, and honey, Ivy's been putting in work behind the scenes, right? Like she's putting in the work.
Ivy's calling up Rihanna, work.
Yeah, work. That lady does not stop. Like she's like Hamilton, non-stop, right?
Yes.
So
the woman is non-stop.
But I do think that Sam, in a way, also is like kind of trying to punish her for how she treated him, basically for leaving him in the first place. Anyway, yeah, she calls him a disgusting pig, and she says the only thing I feel for you is loathing, unadulterated loathing and contempt. She says that's the only thing I feel for you is loathing and contempt. You come from a family of cold, heartless people who think nothing of ruining people's lives like mine and poor Theresa's. And TC is certain that you aborted. I didn't understand why she used that word. Aborted his tennis career. And he said, but he does not let her kind of like deflect onto, oh, you did this to them. You did this. He says, we're not talking about them. We're talking about us. And I know that that vision that you and I just shared affected you as much as it did me. But she says, it's just a vision. Doesn't mean anything. I'm going to go find my husband. Like, he says, if only I had known you were pregnant, I wouldn't have been. I'm sorry. He says, if only I had known you were pregnant, I would have been there for you and the baby. Eve runs out crying, right? She can't handle this. She says, I'm not going to let you hurt me again. And then she runs out in tears. She's upset. Meanwhile, TC is wandering around this mansion and walks into some sort of trophy room. I don't know why there's so many trophies in this room. There's so many trophies.
Was Julian like Serena Williams or something? I mean, he had so many tennis trophies.
So many.
Or maybe it wasn't all tennis trophies. Maybe he was involved in other sports and they were from other sports too. I don't know.
And then I thought, well, maybe it's like the Crane family trophy room. So it's not just Julian's trophies. Maybe it's like Julian, Alistair, Sheridan, whoever else, Ethan, the kids. Maybe it's just a trophy room for where that's just where they put their trophies.
Yeah.
But TC walks in. He sees that stupid ass trophy that he apparently was supposed to win against Julian. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Get over it already.
He grabs the trophy and starts to cry on it.
That's exactly what he does. That's exactly what he does. Well, Tabitha is watching, right? And she zaps in, using her magic, she zaps in a vision of his father. And so he starts talking to, his father. And his dad tells him, this trophy should have been yours. The Cranes took everything from us.
He says, I wanted to win this trophy for you, Pop.
This should have been ours, Pop. Yeah.
Yep.
And at this point, he's like crying. He's sobbing. Oh, this man needs a therapist so bad. I think of all the people on this show who need a therapist, I think he might be at the top of the list. I think it goes like him, Beth, Theresa, Charity. Like of all the people in this town who they all need to see somebody, but he's actually unwell. He blows up at the slightest thing. He always his go-to is always violence. And then he sees this trophy and is sobbing about like what his life should have been. And it's like, do you hate your life that much? I don't know, but
yeah, good point. Because he has a pretty good life.
yeah, he's really upset about like this life that was stolen from him. And it's like, if you had gone on to have like this big tennis career, you probably would not have married Eve. You probably wouldn't have these daughters. You'd have an entirely different life. So it's hard for me. I mean, I don't have kids, but I feel like, I guess people often wonder what their lives would be like if they didn't have one thing or another, right? But I feel like if you have kids that you adore so much, right? He talks about how much he loves his girls.
Well, he loves Whitney.
Yeah. Not so much
The
Sugar
other
Bear.
one, that Sugar Bear.
That Sugar Bear. Oh my God. And I have so much shit to talk about Sugar Bear in a second.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's crying. Whitney walks in on him crying, and she hugs him. She's trying to figure out what's wrong. That's really the end of that. We'll have to pick up with that next week. But Eve is looking for her family around the mansion. She goes outside because she was supposed to be meeting TC. She's supposed to be meeting TC and the girls at the car. And so she's waiting for them outside, and she doesn't see them. And then she's like, oh, there's Chad. Maybe I'm sure he knows where the girls are. So she follows Chad, and she's like, hey, Chad. He turns around, and he's fucking faceless. And she screams, ah! It was so good, so funny, cracked me up. I rewound it probably 3 times. That reveal was so funny to me. But that's where we ended with them.
I screamed too.
Oh yeah, that was scary. It was scary. That's where we ended with them this week. You have anything to add before we move on?
I really want some people on the Discord were talking about diagnosing the personalities of these people, figuring out their personalities. And then we actually have Daisy, who's a therapist, as one of our Patreons. And I would be really interested. Maybe we can do some kind of watch party where we look at these people's personalities, and Daisy can diagnose them with PTSD or ADHD or whatever they've got going on.
I honestly, probably the next watch party, which will be sometime in April. I haven't scheduled it yet because I have to check my work schedule. But probably the next watch party by idea was, because typically, if y'all don't know, we usually watch one episode of the show, and then afterwards we'll discuss it. And then we kind of, I don't know, we do all kinds of different kinds of activities, however the night flows. So last time we did like the March Madness brackets. And I was thinking this time we could maybe do some different personality quizzes as characters. So like we would answer the like Myers-Briggs test or whatever as like Theresa, and see like, oh yeah, this is what Theresa would do, and see what her that
would be very fun.
Yeah, I feel like that would be fun. It might take some time, but I feel like that would be fun. We'll have to choose a couple of characters and do that, and do some different personality tests, because they were talking about Enneagrams. I've never done my Enneagram, so I don't know much about it. I don't put a whole lot of stock into like the personality quizzes. But they are fun. I enjoy them. So anyway, that's all for Troubled Marriages. Now it's time to talk about Shuis. I cannot believe it. We have been on here for 2 hours. I cannot fucking believe this.
It always
my
happens.
God. Oh my God. Okay. Sheridan,
We
we're
still
gonna
have to get through Shawise and Faded Couple.
and Faded Couples. I'm gonna blast through Shawise though. This was
Yes,
easy.
please.
This is easy. This is easy. So, Sheridan.
Tell them the story. Tell them the story.
Yeah. I'm just gonna wait. What do you mean? Tell them the story.
But whatever the Golden Girls thing
Oh,
was,
okay.
maybe I'm not saying
We're gonna
it right.
blast through. I'm going to speed run this. Let's see if I can do
Yes.
this. Sheridan, she is very uneasy about this vision that she's had wherein Luis is married to Beth and she's married to Antonio, and everybody in this vision is happy. So she's talking to Luis about it and saying, am I keeping you from your true love? Am I keeping you from being truly happy? Luis is like, no, you're the woman I love. I don't even think about Beth. I don't care about Beth. I don't want to be with Beth. But she keeps bringing up Antonio's bullshit about Lopez Fitzgerald's always ending up with their first love. And Luis says, yeah, Beth was my first love, but you are my true love. And she's like, yeah, but maybe, I mean, you love your family so much. And maybe if you and I weren't together, it wouldn't be a big deal. Like he says to her, I would choose my family. I would choose you over my family if it came down to it. So, I mean, now I feel like that's a crazy fucking thing to say, but that's where he's at. He's like, if I would choose you over my family if it came down to it. That's, again, nuts. But then there's more nonsense about Beth. She's just like, but you were in love with Beth, and I saw it in our vision, and if I never came into the picture, you two would be married. And Luis is like, yeah, I didn't marry Beth because I didn't want to marry Beth. Like, I don't want to spend the rest of my life with Beth. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And but then Luis finally is like, but you're telling me that it's basically like you're telling me you want me to be with Beth and that you would be somehow be happy without me. Have your feelings about me changed? Because I want to, Luis is saying, I want to be with you, but it seems like you want me to be with Beth for some reason, but I don't want to be with Beth. And so maybe it's because you don't want to be with me, is what he's saying to her. And he says, why do you keep pushing me away and telling me that I'll be happier with Beth? And he says, I don't want to be with Beth, in no uncertain terms. And she says, no, honey, my feelings for you haven't changed at all. It's just that the visions have gotten to me and made me think, what if? And Luis says, well, love isn't about what ifs. It's about certainty and commitment. And right now I'm not hearing that from you. I'm not hearing certainty or commitment from you. And he says, maybe this vision is just an excuse for you to end our relationship. And then she says some silliness about her saying, she's like, no, I just felt like maybe you would be happier with Beth. And then this annoyed me because she says, I love you. I want to be with you. I want to be, my feelings for you haven't changed at all. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, is what Sheridan's saying to him. But I just felt like you would be happier with Beth. And he's like, oh, you would give up your happiness because you thought that I would be happier with Beth? I'm so touched. And then they just like make up and kiss. Yeah. And they start making out because Luis felt like Sheridan was willing to sacrifice her own happiness for his happiness. It was all nonsense. It was all ridiculous. Whatever. Moving on. So, Beth is talking to Antonio, pressing him about this elopement that they've talked about. She wants him to marry Sheridan tonight. Marry Sheridan tonight. She wants him to marry her tonight. She's like, you could go to New York, or even better, you could fly to Vegas tonight and marry her. And then Edna interrupts and says, wait a minute, I hope you're not talking about eloping. It would kill your mother, which is true. Which is true. She's like, you just got back. She hasn't seen you in years. And I'm sure she and the rest of your family would want to be there for your marriage, for your wedding. And so she kind of puts the kibosh on Beth's little machinations, which I don't think Antonio was gonna try and marry Sheridan tonight anyway, but they were kind of pushing like they might, so I don't know. Then Beth and Edna get a vision together. And it's Beth in her old age. She's drinking straight from the bottle. And then somebody comes to the door, and it's a cake with 1,000 candles on it. Turns out it's Edna's 120th birthday. So Edna lives a very long time in this vision, and Beth's still there with her, taking care of her, and she's just had a horrible life. And Edna thinks it's a great vision. Beth is like, that was a fucking nightmare. Later on, Edna then talks with Antonio alone, and she tells him, oh, yeah, this happens. So Edna saw that Luis and Sheridan were like kissing. She saw them kissing somewhere. Like they're in a different room away from the party, but she saw them like through a window. And so Antonio comes to bring her some water. They can't see in the window anymore because Luis and Sheridan have moved. But Beth tells him, you know what? Edna tells him, you know what? I came up with a great idea of how you can marry Sheridan tonight, but also make your family happy. Why don't you go find Sheridan, take her somewhere, get married, and then come back here and have the ceremony for your family. And he's like, you know what? That's a great idea. And she sends him off in the direction where she knows Luis and Sheridan are making out, right? She's like, I definitely saw them like in the atrium. Go look in the atrium for them, because I'm pretty sure I saw them in there. So they're together making out heavy. Antonio comes in. Yo, their passions actually got me, because I was certain they were going to fake us out with this. I was certain. But no, Antonio saw them together. Now, by the time he gets there, they're not kissing anymore. They're just embracing, like a very long hug, right? He's like, I can't believe this. My brother? I can't believe this. What are they doing? Why is Luis holding Sheridan like that? And then he passes out, of course. Where's my womp, 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 womp? He passes out, of course. Now, I thought he was going to wake up and be like, I thought they were going to do the charity thing where he was going to wake up and be like, what happened? I don't even remember. Oh,
I don't remember anything, Miguel.
Exactly. But he wakes up. They see him fall. They're like, oh my God, Antonio. And they get him up, and he's pissed. He's super angry. He's saying, I saw the two of you. You were all over each other. I demand to know the truth. What's going on here? Somebody better tell me the truth now. Like yelling. And here's what I'm going to say. This man is clearly upset. Just tell him now. Like he's okay. He's fine. He's not dropping dead. He's clearly upset. He didn't drop dead. He fell, but he didn't die. So just tell him the truth and see what fucking happens. They do not do that. So Beth finds out that her mom sent Antonio to basically his death. And she's like, listen, Mom, if Antonio finds out about Sheridan and Luis, he might die. And then you won't just be a horrible mother, you'll be a murderer too. And so she goes off under this like guise of like, I'm gonna save Antonio. But we all know that this was selfish on Beth's part. Like Beth doesn't give a fuck about Antonio and his life. She doesn't. She doesn't. What she cares about Antonio for is that he is Luis's brother and a unknowing ally to her plot to get Luis, right? Like he doesn't know what's going on at all, but she's using him as a tool. So she doesn't give a shit if he dies, except for the fact that it would fuck up her plan. So she goes after them. She gets there, but she gets there too late. She's watching from the doorway. Edna like catches up with her and like knocks her down, trips her and knocks her on the floor. Edna gets very physical with Beth this week. And again, I think it's interesting because last week I was saying, I think the writers are trying to make Beth more sympathetic. Makes Edna more sympathetic and make us really view Beth as like this villain. But now this week, in the way that Edna like got really physical with her this week, it's like, oh no, they're still showing us that Edna's awful, that she's a horrible, horrible mother. And it actually it endears me to Beth a little bit more again, right? Like, I think maybe they felt like they had shown her crazy too soon, maybe. And so they're trying to like dial it back a little bit. I'm not sure. But anyway, Beth she tries to stop Luis and Sheridan from telling Antonio the truth. It doesn't matter because nobody's going to tell him the truth. Luis says, yeah, I'm going to tell Antonio the truth. He really needs to know the truth. Sheridan's like, no. And so she tries to explain what's going on. She's like, no, Luis, let me. And Antonio cuts her off after just yelling, somebody better tell me the damn truth now. After yelling that, when Sheridan's ready to talk and explain, he cuts her off and is like, he just starts blaming Luis, saying that he was putting the moves on Sheridan and he was just taking advantage of her.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
He didn't want to hear the truth.
Yeah.
He didn't want to hear the truth. He especially didn't want to hear it from Sheridan. He doesn't respect her at all. He doesn't care about her beyond her fucking body. He doesn't care about her brain. He doesn't care about anything she has to say, because if he did, he would not have cut her off when she was trying to explain something to him or trying to tell him what he needed to hear. And I don't know what Sheridan was going to say, because I think Luis was definitely about to tell him the truth. I don't know if Sheridan was actually going to tell him the truth, but it doesn't matter. We'll never know. I guess we'll never know what she was trying to say. But yeah, he doesn't want to know the truth. You can handle the truth. He doesn't want to know the truth. And I hate him bad. I hate him so bad. But he just goes on and on about Luis being a bastard and how he was putting the moves on Sheridan and saying, and then he was like, and you know what? Doing this to me is one thing, but how could you do something like this to Beth? You don't fucking care about Beth. Shut up. You don't even know her. And so then Luis tells him, as usual, you're going off about some shit you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And he's like, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you what's going on. Antonio collapses again.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I hate him. I really hate him.
And it's pretty clear. I don't know if he hit his head last time, but they make it pretty clear this time he hit his head on the floor when he fell.
Mm-hmm. He collapsed.
Why can't he just die?
Why won't he just drop dead? Oh yeah. My God. Actually, this reminds me, and yeah, we're running a little longer than I expected, but that's whatever. This reminds me, I probably have told this story on the podcast before, but it fits so well with Antonio. Laura's mom was visiting one time, and she was telling this story about how she and her husband went on like this cruise with her husband's best friend and his wife, because the husband's name is Mark, and Mark apparently was dying, right? And so they went on this like $10,000 cruise to kind of celebrate Mark's like end of life kind of thing, you know, just a last hurrah kind of thing, right? She's like, yeah, we went on that cruise. It was $10,000. And then Mark didn't even die. And that is how I feel about Antonio. It's like, we're doing all of this shit and he won't even die. Right. He won't even die.
He has collapsed twice now in the span of 5 minutes or something like that. And he's woken up, gotten up both times. He seems okay. Just tell him the truth.
Just tell him the truth at this point. And what really aggravated me about him too is he collapses. Pilar and Hank rush in. Beth and Edna come in. And Pilar's like, oh my God, please do not tell me that your love has killed my son.
Antonio.
Oh my God, Pilar, come on. And he wakes up and they're getting him up off the floor and they're like, we have to take you to the hospital. And he says, I'm not going back to the hospital. Not now, not ever. What? I hate him. I detest him.
Okay, don't go. Just crawl in your bed and die.
Then just die. And what's killing me about this too is like, you're collapsing. He was like, I just got a little dizzy. That's all. You collapsed 2 times. And I know you think Eve gave you a clean bill of health, obviously she was wrong. I would be asking for a second opinion.
Yeah.
If I was in the hospital and they were doing all these tests and all of this stuff, and then my doctor was like, "Yep, you're fine," and then I left and I just kept falling and passing out.
Yes.
I want a second and a third opinion right now, because clearly this doctor was wrong and did not give me adequate care. So anyway, he can barely stand up on his own. Like Pilar and Hank are like holding him up and he's like refusing to go to the hospital. And then he starts acting like he's going to fight Luis. And he's like, "Luis, I want to know what you were doing with Sheridan. Tell me now, like you had your hands on my girl." And everyone's like, "You need to sit the fuck down." They're like, "Let's take you back to the cottage. We'll sit you down. You can calm down and we'll explain things at the cottage." So they usher him back to the cottage. We all go back to the cottage. They sit him down. Antonio starts throwing names around, calling Luis a bastard, demands an explanation from Luis. "Well, Luis, we're all waiting." And Luis is ready to tell him the truth. Luis is like, "You know what? Here it is." Pilar's like, "Mijo, I think your brother needs some water. Why don't you go get him some water?" And so he walks across the room and then he like starts talking to Sheridan. Like, how does Antonio not see what is going on in front of his face?
Mm-hmm.
This is what drives me crazy about him. Everybody's acting.
This is foreshadowing.
Yeah.
If you know what happens later.
Yeah. Based on what we saw earlier, a couple weeks ago, it's also reminiscent of that. But everybody in this room is acting extremely suspicious. Extremely suspicious. And then Sheridan and Luis huddle up and start like talking to each other in hushed tones. He doesn't say anything about it. And I'm like, how do you not see what is going on? How do you not realize what is going on around you? At the very least, that it's not just Luis, that Sheridan is a part of it. Like she's not like an unwitting portion of the situation. Like she's in it willingly, whatever it is. Like maybe you don't know exactly what it is, but hell, you saw them hugging each other, all hugged up in the atrium together. But anyway, there's some conversation between Sheridan and Luis where they're going back and forth on whether they should tell Antonio the truth. Of course, Luis thinks they should, and Sheridan's like, "But we'll be responsible for his death if we tell him." Then Edna walks in. I loved this, actually. Edna comes in and advises them, "I think you really just need to come clean, get it all out in the open and get on with your lives." And so they are like, "Yeah, you know what? We need to tell him the truth." And so they agree to tell Antonio the truth. So they go over and Luis starts to give his explanation, standing next to Sheridan. Sheridan's like standing there like, like she's there as his moral support. And as Luis is about to explain anything, Antonio says, "Well, now I changed my mind. I don't want to hear a word out of your lying mouth."
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I fucking hate him. I really, 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 really hate Antonio. I cannot stand him. He doesn't want to, like I said, he does not want to know the truth. So he says, I changed my mind. I don't want to hear a word out of your lying mouth. And then Luis tells Antonio, "Well, you're going to hear this anyway." And he tells him about the vision that Sheridan had, where Luis was married to Beth, and Antonio and Sheridan were married, and they had a happy life together. And Antonio's like, oh, I get it. I understand now. Sheridan was so excited about her glimpse into the future that she stopped to tell you about it, and then y'all hugged about it, and she just wanted to share her joy. I'm so sorry, Luis. I can't believe I thought that you would make a move on my girl. I'm so sorry. Oh my God.
This asshole.
I hated that. And for a plethora of reasons that I'm not gonna get into right now because we've gone on very long enough on this. Anything to add?
I feel bad for Sheridan. I know she was being annoying earlier when she was talking to Luis, But at this point, I felt bad for her, and Antonio was hugging all over her, and Mackenzie Westmore gets this look on her face, like her big, beautiful eyes are so sad. Like, oh, you can tell this is the last thing she wants to be doing, is
Yeah.
hugging this fucker.
Yeah, yeah. And she has love for him and affection for him, so she doesn't want to hurt him, and I get that.
Hmm.
But y'all gonna have to tell this man the truth. I know they're not
Yeah.
going to. I
What is the end game, though? And I'm going to bring this up when we talk about Whitney and Chad and Simone. What is the end game? If you refuse to tell this person the truth and they think someone is in love with them when they're actually in love with their sibling, what is the end game? You
Yeah.
have to come out with it, or everyone's lives are going to be messed up.
Yeah, what kind of life do you think you're gonna have together?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. At least with Sheridan and Luis, they think that Antonio's gonna die in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's true.
With
Of course
Simone,
he
it's
won't.
different. Simone is a little bit different because they all have their whole lives ahead of them. So it's like, yeah, what are y'all gonna do here?
Mhm.
But at least with Antonio, they're like, if we just ride this out for a couple of weeks, he'll be dead. But then he didn't even die.
Yeah.
So shout out to Laura's mom. Now let's move on to our fated couples very quickly. I really am gonna speed run Theresa, Ethan, and Gwen. Nothing happens here really, just something tiny little things. Theresa has had this vision. She's gonna continue to relentlessly pursue Ethan. We all know this. There's no that's not news. And she's like in her room crying about where they're at in the relationship right now. He sees her, and then he brings up the vision and she brings up the vision and tells him that he needs to admit that he loves her. She says, admit it, I'm the one that you love. He does not deny loving her, which Ethan never denies loving her. He never says like, no, Theresa, I don't love you. But he does say to her, our relationship is over, and that vision did not mean anything. They go back and forth for a little bit about that. Y'all fill in the blank. You know how this conversation goes between these two. Ethan, you love me. Theresa, you lied to me. Yada yada yada. Over, and it's rinse, wash, repeat, right? Or wash, rinse, repeat. Then Theresa gets a pain in her stomach. Now, I couldn't tell if it was real or not. I'm leaning towards not, but it seemed real at first. But then when he leaves, okay, so she's like, ow, as they're arguing. And then he's like, what is it? Are you okay? What? And she's like, oh, it's just, I've been having like this weird pain ever since I gave birth. It comes and goes, which could be true. She just had a baby. And so he's like, you've been doing too much. Like, sit down. I'll go get you a heating pad. He goes off to get her a heating pad. Teresa's like, see, Ethan, you do love me, to herself, obviously, because you want to take care of me even when I'm having like the smallest little pain or whatever. Gwen walks up. She comes in looking for Ethan, obviously. And she's like, Theresa, what are you up to now? And Theresa says that she's not up to anything, just waiting for Ethan to realize that we belong together. She's like, I'm not up to anything. I'm just waiting for Ethan to realize that he and I belong together. And then she tells Gwen about the vision that she had. And Gwen says, well, I heard Ethan say that vision didn't mean anything and it didn't matter. And Theresa says, yeah, that's what he says. But look where you found him. Baby, when I tell you Theresa has some of the coldest fucking lines when it comes to a nice little clap back, especially when she talks to Gwen. When she said, yeah, he says that, but look where you found him, in my room, because he came looking for me, not you. And she says to her, and that's how it's always gonna be. You'll think that he's yours, but he's always gonna be looking for me. He's mine, Gwen, believe it. He'll get over my lies eventually, but you're just too stupid to realize that. Oh, wow. I mean, where's my air horn? She really went in on Gwen on that. And honestly, Theresa didn't say anything that crazy to me because she was right. Now,
Yeah.
granted, I also realize and understand like Ethan has made a decision and Theresa is not respecting that, right? But she's not wrong to say, Ethan, look at where you keep finding him with me. Ethan keeps making his way to me, not the other way around, right? Like Ethan really just walked in that room. He found her. He saw her cry. He could have walked past that. Same way you said about how Sam could just walk past Ivy and not have, he never has to interact with her. It's the same thing for Ethan and Theresa. Ethan doesn't ever have to be interacting with Theresa.
They can't leave those women alone.
He chooses to. And so this is when Ethan comes back and he's like, what's going on here? Everything all right? And Gwen's like, everything's fine. Nothing's going on. If I were Gwen, I would just be putting Theresa on blast constantly, right? Like, I would be like, well, Ethan, Theresa seems to think that y'all are going to get back together. Can you please tell her? Can you please talk? She said to me that you say one thing but do another, and that I'm gonna continue to find you with her. Is that true? Like, if I were Gwen, I would make sure Ethan always knew exactly what Theresa said to me. Right? Gwen doesn't do that. I don't know why. And maybe Maria can shed more light on why Gwen wouldn't do that, because she's definitely more sympathetic to Gwen than I am typically. And she likes Gwen, so I feel like she has more insight on her as a character. And more fair insight, because to me it's just stupid not to put Theresa on blast every time to Ethan. But maybe she doesn't want to seem petty.
Yeah, maybe Gwen thought it would make her look bad to Ethan if she started bringing all that up, like sort of like she was tattling on Theresa or something.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that. Okay, so then Pilar comes in after the two of them leave. Ethan and Gwen go back down to the party together. Theresa has a conversation with Pilar about Ethan being baby Ethan's real daddy. She's like, he's gonna be, eventually we'll get together and we'll have babies together, and he's gonna give little Ethan brothers and sisters. And Julian, I never want Julian to come anywhere near my kids. And he's not there. He's not baby Ethan's father in my mind. Basically, Ethan is. I don't know, little Ethan. I keep saying baby Ethan, maybe because he's a baby right now. And yeah, they have this conversation. Pilar tries to talk a little sense into her daughter. Of course, we know that won't work, and Theresa doesn't listen anyway. And then Pilar also warns her about this job at Crane Industries because Alistair called Mouse in the house.
She's attacking I don't know if it was the strings on my hoodie or my microphone cord, but
no, yeah, I saw the jump and I was like, oh, Alistair calls and tells Theresa he wants her to start her job tonight. Remember that he has given her a VP position. And she's like, oh, tonight? Well, I have this party. And he's like, it doesn't matter. You're a Crane now. And a Crane puts work above everything. And he's like, I'm sending some documents over for you to analyze. I want to report on my desk in the morning. And she's like, all right, Mr. Crane, I'll have that to you. I promise. And because she's ready to work, she really does. I do think Theresa really does want to do a good job, and which is admirable. But she's not qualified.
She's not qualified, and she even says it. She says, "My job is to get Ethan back. That's the job she's gonna work at."
Yeah. She's like, this is doing the work of my actual job is secondary to the real work of trying to get Ethan back.
Yes.
But Pilar warns her about this job at Crane Industries. She's like, you do not take this job. Don't do this. Theresa's like, this is how I'm going to get Ethan back. And I am going to do whatever I have to do to get Ethan back. And then Pilar is like, well, I have to go check on the staff because Pilar still works here somehow. Pilar, girl.
But I thought it was funny because Pilar tells Theresa, you can't make a deal with the devil. It will destroy your life and your baby's life.
Too late.
She already made a deal with the devil.
Too late, lady. Too little, too late.
That whole thing where she drowned and she had the thing with Devil Julian.
Yeah. And we're never going to bring it up again.
No.
Too late. Yeah. I mean, it's it is something that could have been so interesting. And so sometimes you can bring it up and think, man, this could have been part of the devil plot. There's several things where we're like, man, there's things we could have done with this devil Julian plot. Well, but then Julian comes back too, so it's like it's just the real devil at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Pilar's like, I gotta go check on the staff because I still work here, and Theresa's like, Mama, I'm the mistress of this house. Like, I don't want you working here anymore. Then fire her. Fire her. Julian won't say anything. Fire your mama. Say, here's your severance check, and write her like $1 million check or something. You know what I mean? But Pilar is like, well, it's good, honest work. Except you have talked about how evil the Cranes are, how evil this mansion is, and how everything in here is evil. Is it good, honest work, Pilar? Is it actually good, honest work? She says it's good, honest work, and I do this job to try to set a good example for you, Theresa. And I hope one day you'll really take it to heart and see the good example that I'm trying to set for you. By doing a job you don't have to do. This is a poor example. This is a very bad example, Pilar.
For a horrible family.
Yeah, for a horrible family and a evil family that in a place that you think is evil. And have called their money blood money, but
right.
You don't have any problem with your paycheck for some reason. So, anyway, Theresa tells her, whatever, Mama, I got work to do. So she goes to a new room I haven't seen before. Have you seen this set? It was like a library, but it didn't look like Julian's like study. It was a different room, but it doesn't matter.
I don't remember seeing it before either.
Yeah, she goes into this room and she's waiting on these papers. I guess she thought they were going to be faxed over, but Ethan shows up with the papers, gives them to her, asks her what they are, and she's like, "Oh, Alistair wants me to do this report." And then he offers to help her with it. I want to be clear that he offers to help her. He sees her reading it, and she's like, oh, some of these words are a little tough. And then he's like, do you want me to help you, Theresa? I can help you. And of course, she's not going to turn down spending time with Ethan, obviously. And so they start looking at these papers, and he's like, oh, you're in luck. This is contracts from some account that I was working on when I was working at Crane. So, I'm actually very familiar with this. And so they start looking through it, and he helps her with it. Gwen shows up, sees him helping her, and it's like, well, takes him back to the party, basically. But he lingers. She's like, don't you want to join the party again? And he's like, oh, I was just helping Theresa. And he gets up, and they start to go, and then he turns back and is watching Theresa while she's reading and writing and doing her work. And he looks very impressed with her. And basically says that he's impressed with her and her work ethic. And he's like, wow, she's really doing it. And that's really all there is with them this week. You got anything to add to that?
No, I'm good.
All right. And finally, we're moving on to Chad and Whitney.
Oh, sorry. Actually, I do just want to say, oh my gosh, the parallels between Theresa and Ivy and Ethan and Sam.
Mm-hmm. They have there's massive parallels there. I mean, so it's impossible to deny, except Ivy will deny it till her dying breath.
I know, and just like I can't understand how I adore Ivy, but Theresa annoys me. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The way I am.
That is interesting that you love Ivy, but Theresa annoys you. Because for me, I guess you know what? Because I really like Theresa, but I really like Ivy too. But I have taken Ivy to task, more than I have on Theresa. But I also think Ivy's done much worse than Theresa has up to this point. So we'll see what Theresa does later, and I'll see how I feel about that. But yeah, Whitney and Chad. Whitney, they have this vision of Whitney. Oh my God. The wigs in this vision were an actual hate crime. First of all,
The whole vision was so bad.
I hate their vision was the vision that I hated the most.
Me too.
Whitney and Simone both have these fuck ass bobs. Like, they look ridiculous. Whitney comes back home and she turns out she's a rich tennis star. Chad and Simone are married. They have a baby. They're raising their daughter together. And that's the vision, basically. And after the vision, Chad tells Whitney that won't happen. Don't worry about that. We have to tell Simone the truth. Because Whitney's like, yeah, that vision has made me more determined to tell Simone the truth because I can't, that was horrible. We cannot let this happen. So they like are holding hands, and Simone like walks in on them holding hands, and Whitney says to Simone, Chad and I have something to tell you. Simone gets very defensive and she says, what are you doing hanging all over my boyfriend like that? And Simone starts flying off the, talk about flying off the handle. Simone starts flipping the fuck out. She accuses Whitney of stealing her boyfriend. No mention of Chad at first, right? She's like, Whitney, you're horrible. I can't believe you would do this to me. Blaming Whitney for, stealing Chad from her. And then she says that Kay kept warning me, but I wouldn't listen. And she says, I didn't want to believe that my own sister would do something like this, and that the man that I love will betray me. And then she goes, you two are the most despicable people I've ever met in my life. She starts sobbing and moaning, and there's just great wailing and gnashing of teeth. And she's yelling about them being together. And she finally goes, I hate you. I don't want anything to do with you ever again. I will hate you for the rest of my life, forever. And then she runs off all upset. Whitney's very upset or very worried about Simone because she gets that like flashback of her mom telling her that if Simone ever got her heart broken, that she would suffer severe psychological damage and might go on a rampage, basically. And so they chase after Simone and they catch up to her, and there's a random yellow classic car, and she gets into this car. And they're like trying to stop her. They're like, Simone, you can't drive. You're too upset to drive. Simone, I don't know whose car this is that she gets into.
I thought maybe it was one of Julian's cars.
It has to be. It's like a nice old car.
Right. Got the keys in it.
Yeah, the keys are in it. Yeah, so she gets in the car and she drives off, and it cuts away and I thought, oh, Simone drove off. We're going to have to deal with that. She drove 3 feet and crashed into a wall. 3 feet and crashed into a wall. They make it so dramatic. She couldn't even, first of all, it's an old ass car, so it's not like it couldn't have gotten up faster than, I don't know, 3 miles an hour. She wasn't going fast at all, but they made it seem like it was this horrible crash. She hits it. She like knocks out for a moment. When we cut back to her, like after commercial break, her head's back. I felt like they had shown like a little trickle of blood on her head. Did you see that?
She had a little cut or a trickle of blood on her forehead.
Yeah. So they made it look like it was like super dramatic, but she immediately wakes up and just starts going off again about how horrible Whitney and Chad are. And all of the kids at this moment, this is when Kay was about to tell Charity that she slept with Miguel, but then this shit with Simone happens, and they hear it and they run over and see and find Simone in the car. And then Charity explains to her this, oh God, I hate, y'all, sometimes I kind of hate this show. I hate it because Charity explains, oh, a lot of weird things have been happening at the mansion tonight. And she explains about the visions. And then Whitney says, that's true. Me and Chad had a vision. And then she tells her about the vision she had. Why would you feed your sister's fucking delusions with that stupid vision that you do not want to come true? Why would you tell her? Yeah, me and Chad also had a vision. And in that vision, you and Chad were together and had a baby and I was a tennis star. Why would you tell her that when that's not what you want to happen and you had decided you were going to tell her the truth? I don't know.
You're right. You're right. The choices the characters make in this show sometimes makes you hate the show.
I was so mad. I paused. I had to take a break. I was like, I got to take a break. I went and got food. I was like, I can't deal with this right now. I have to come back to this. So, Simone immediately she does that thing that we used to talk about Theresa doing, where she's on that crazy pendulum where she goes from like,
yes,
insanely enraged, angry, upset to like overjoyed and happy.
Yeah.
And
Mama,
there's like,
Mama, Ethan said he'll never love me again. And then 2 seconds later, Mama, I'm gonna get Ethan back.
Yep. And this is exactly what Simone did, because she was yelling, I hate you. I hate you. And then she's like, oh my God, Whitney, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I ever thought that you would ever try to be with my man. And Chad, I love you. You're my man. And like, okay, girl.
It was, she blames it on Kay and says that Kay was putting ideas in her head. These girls aren't friends. I think you've said that before on the podcast. Kay and Simone can't be real friends.
They are not.
And I was thinking about that earlier when Kay is talking to Simone about the fight she had with Grace and how she wants Ivy to steal her dad away from Grace. And Simone is standing there and I think visibly rolling her eyes and shaking her head at Kay. These girls aren't real friends.
No, these girls are not real friends. Because, so let's talk about that. So Whitney tells Chad, like off to the side, this is exactly how I thought Simone would react. She's like, this is exactly what I was afraid of. How are we ever going to tell Simone we're in love without it killing her? She wasn't going to die. But anyway.
She just crashed a car and she was fine.
She was fine. She crashed it immediately. That was so funny.
That cracked me up.
Yeah. And so it's everybody goes back inside, but Simone says, Kay, I need to talk to you. And she leaves her or makes her stay back with her. And she blames the whole thing on Kay. Like you said, she says, what happened tonight was your fault. And she says, I wouldn't have freaked out about seeing Whitney and Chad together if you hadn't put all those lies in my head about my sister loving my boyfriend. And then Kay says, they weren't lies, Simone. You're just too stupid to see the truth. Yes. Say that again. They weren't lies, Simone. You're just too stupid to see the truth.
Handle the truth. You can't handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth. And so Simone's like, I don't believe you. Chad loves me. Did you see how upset he was when I wrecked the car? Well, yeah, girl, you smashed the car into everybody was upset. Everybody was upset.
And Kay claps back again. Kay says, well, let's put you and Whitney in danger at the same time and see who Chad goes to.
Yeah. She says, how about this? We'll put you and Whitney out as bear bait and see which one he saves first. Maybe then you'll realize he loves your sister and not you. Maybe then you will realize it. And then Simone tries to make Kay apologize to her, but Kay refuses. She's like, no, you're delusional. I'm going to go figure out my destiny with Miguel. Like, good luck with this. I already told you what the fuck it is, and you refuse to see it or believe it. So I'm going to go off and do the thing that I was doing before you ruined everything. Actually, I should be mad at you because I was about to blow up Charity and Miguel's relationship and I didn't. So yeah, they separate, and then Simone goes back in and she's dancing with Chad. Chad looks like a captive, like he looks like a hostage.
So uncomfortable. It's so sad.
He looks like a hostage.
Like Sheridan when Antonio was hugging over her.
I was about to say basically that the parallels between Simone and Antonio are unsettling to me. Because Simone is a character that I used to really, really like and I used to really, really root for. And I hate what they have done to her. I hate what they have turned her into.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's refusing to see what's right in front of her. Everybody's uncomfortable. Everybody knows that Chad and Whitney are together.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody except for her and I guess TC, who's just ignoring it. But yeah, she's just ignoring how uncomfortable Chad obviously is. She's just ignoring how uncomfortable Whitney obviously is, and how Whitney's like always just like staring at them right when they're together. So whatever. Chad manages to break away from Simone for a moment, and Chad tells Whitney, like, we can't go on like this. We have to tell Simone the truth. And Whitney says, Simone almost died when she thought we were together. No, she didn't. No, she didn't. She almost died. She did almost die when she saw y'all kiss that one time when she got hit by the car. But this time, she was fine. She's just irrational. But that's not your fault. That's not your fault.
Tell her the truth. Like I said before, what is the end game in this? Is Chad going to marry Simone and have kids with her, like in the vision, because they refuse to tell her the truth?
Yeah, that's what it seems
Is
like.
Whitney going to go off and play tennis? That was one thing I thought was funny about the vision. Whitney is wearing this white tank top, and the actress has very slender arms.
Mm-hmm.
She's not a tennis player.
No.
Coco Gauff's arms don't look like that. Serena Williams' arms don't look like that.
No, they're ripped.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that young lady can barely pick up a racket. Yeah, let alone win Wimbledon.
Right.
So that's pretty much it. At one point, Whitney decides, this is when Whitney goes to find TC and she finds him sobbing. Unfortunately, because she was like, I know, I got to tell Dad that, because that was kind of what she and Chad had talked about. Like, we're going to have to like bring TC into it and fix this whole thing. Tell him the whole thing, tell him what happened, and lay this thing to rest. So she goes to find TC, but when she finds him, he's crying. So I kind of think she's probably not going to bring up the whole Simone thing. So that's it. That's all I have. That's all she wrote. You got anything to add?
Nope.
Well, y'all, Karen, where can the people find you online?
Find me on the Discord or on Instagram. I'm Karen for America on Instagram.
All right. And like Karen, you can find me on the Discord or on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/passionspodcast. Sign up for whatever tier you find most agreeable. And with that, you are my passion for life.